Imagine being reincarnated into a fantasy world where you can play the hero, save lives with sword and magic, and have thrilling adventures every single day. Our hero is a fan of exactly this kind of world. However, it's easier said than done, especially when you're not just watching something on screen, but are actually part of the same universe. Our hero is reborn as Rudian in Chronicles of the Seven Colored World, an extra character with no interest in the upcoming war, world domination, or obviously a psychotic hero. But as time passes, and with the help of a mysterious power, a monster that behaves like an AI, and a demonic sword, Rudian begins to realize that maybe, just maybe, he has a chance to change the future, to pursue this new purpose. He tosses his peaceful escape plan into the dustbin and takes matters into his own hands. Will he succeed, or will he discover that corruption and demons run deeper than he ever anticipated? In a fictional universe called Chronicles of the Seven Colored World, the main character, Lee Ji-Han-woo, a former high school student, is reincarnated as Abel and sets out to save a fallen world. But being part of a world with such a chaotic power balance isn't all glory and heroism. For instance, there's a psychopathic female character obsessed with the hero, ready to kill him over the slightest mistake. Then there's a secret society constantly plotting to destroy the world, and it's up to the hero to stop them. Even the so-called allies are unpredictable and might backstab him at any moment. As a result, the game is widely mocked. But ironically, it's still wildly popular, despite its messy plot. It has a loyal fan base that sticks around hungry for more chaos. Our hero is one of those die-hard fans, but laughing at the chaos on a screen is a lot easier than living through it. Now reincarnated as Rudian, our hero finally understands that reality. As a mere extra, he finds himself chasing after Cerritos, trying to help defeat a monster. But the moment he lays eyes on the creature, which is a hulking beast that could crush him like a tomato with one hit, he panics, terrified. He runs away, handing a sword to Cerritos, who immediately insults him for being slow. He then passes a shield to another knight, before scrambling to save himself. Unfortunately, the monster is about to strike him, just as the blow is about to land. Cerritos activates his shield and saves him, something Rudian is genuinely grateful for. The next moment, Cerritos slays the monster. Its massive stone-like head crashes to the ground, narrowly missing Rudian's feet. He's saved by a hair's breadth, but he falls flat on his face and injures himself in the process. As he lies there groaning, he remembers waking up in this world 3 years ago. Back then, he had found himself in the body of Rudian. A 14-year-old orphan, his first reaction had been panic, surrounded by unfamiliar faces in a completely alien world. Fortunately, the memories of his vessel's previous life gradually returned, giving him some idea of how to survive. Still, he had desperately tried every extreme method he could think of to return to Korea, but that dream faded quickly. Eventually, he was recruited as a servant by Karen von Iskard, who now encouraged his knights to join him in acquiring a holy sword and treasure inside the dungeon. Karen, the young lord of Iskard territory, made a dramatic entrance, gesturing flamboyantly and declaring that they should hold nothing back against their enemies. Thanks to Karen's over-the-top cheerleading, the blood pressure of the knights probably spiked by 50 points. But Rudian knows the truth. That Karen is just another privileged fool with delusions of grandeur, watching him throw around dramatic, yet utterly useless proclamations while charging at the monster. Rudian nearly cries that why couldn't he have been reborn as a useless, rich heir like him instead of a commoner orphan? The Chronicles of the Seven Colored World is, after all, a completely insane place, doomed to be destroyed not once, not twice, but 3 times. According to the story's plot, Rudy is nothing more than an extra in this madness. To make things worse, most of the main characters are so unhinged. They destroy cities or entire countries for fun. Why? Because in this world, that's just considered a casual pastime. Now stuck in the middle of the battle, Rudian watches as his leader orders the knights to prepare for combat. Once again, this time after the appearance of a new monster. Amid the chaos, Rudian wants just one thing: to survive, that's it. He's worked without complaint, doing every boring mundane task anyone barked at him. And now the real question is, how did he end up in a dungeon surrounded by knights? Well, a few days earlier, Rudian had received a sharp slap from Countess Louisa of the Iskar family. His crime is a minor misstep that reveals true nature of his lord. To the Count, Louisa reminded him coldly that he was only hired by her precious son, Karen, to clean up his messes. Rudian had no choice but to bow his head and apologize. Before leaving, the Countess made one thing crystal clear: if anything happened to her darling boy Karen, Rudian would be reduced to ashes. now glancing at Karain, who is waving his sword around like a toddler with a stick. Rudian seriously considers his options. Quit this cursed job or murder this utterly useless noble. In truth, Karen, who is Lord Iskar's eldest son, is nothing more than a spoiled brat with a long record of idiotic antics. Most of the time, Rudian's main job is to clean up Karen's messes. He receives letters and direct complaints from everyone, and whenever he mentions these complaints to Karain, he gets nothing but a dismissive order to deal with it himself. Recently, Rudian brings up Count's anger, who has discovered that his son is involved with the underworld. As usual, Karain is about to tell Rudian to handle it, but he suddenly pauses, realizing the gravity of the situation. He panics at the thought that the Count has actually noticed something. This is the 5th time this has happened. Frustrated, Rudian reminds Karain again that he specifically told him not to get involved with the underworld. But of course, Karain messed up the moment Rudy and turned his back to do actual work. Karen tries to protest, but Rudy is already fed up with his recklessness, especially his constant dealings with a world polluted by crime. But the real issue isn't just Karen's shady connections. It's his public image, as someone practically treated like a prince in his territory. Being seen consorting with criminals is a disaster waiting to happen. Once the nobles witness his lecherous activities, word will spread to the capital faster than wildfire. Karen nervously insists that it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, he's still the Lord. Rudian's mood darkens. He presses Karen to finish that ridiculous thought, silently daring him to claim that hanging out with criminals is somehow helping to contribute in something. Recently, there are reports of illegal activities near the border. Drug smuggling, slave trading, and loan sharks operating freely. Naturally, the central government demands strict territorial management, especially since the Mauryan empires. Central delegation is scheduled to visit Iskar, but the Count reassures them that there's nothing to worry about. But now, Karain provides enough of an excuse for them to meddle in its affairs and do whatever they please. Rudian grows increasingly worried. As the direct servant of this spoiled brat, he knows he'll go down with him. He thinks about the crisis he'll face once the main story begins. He'd rather shave his head bald, be stripped of Karen's lordship, and enter a monastery than go through it. Well, that's a lame joke. But the panic is real. He knows that in the capital, where the emperor's word is absolute, they'll receive nothing but the death penalty, and he'll be dragged into it right alongside Karen to literally save his head. Rudian decides on one last desperate solution for that. Both of them head to the Count's study where they're granted entry. Both young men are visibly nervous. After all, Rudian has no choice now but to reveal the dark side of the Count's beloved son, now facing Count Ricard the Margrave of the territory, and Derek the commander of the Lionhearts. The Count's private night. Rudian feels genuinely grateful that Derek understands his struggle. Derek believes that this time the mistake of Karen is quite serious. However, Rudian sheepishly replies that he couldn't do anything, since everything happens in his absence. On the other hand, the Count realizes that he has already heard about the mess Karen created. He asks whether Karen even knows who his so-called companions really are, before Karen can say anything. The Count informs him that these bad guys are actually people, so dangerous that even the 5th Night Order of the Imperial household is after them. Upon hearing this, Rudian freezes while realizing the gravity of the situation. He understands that if the direct Night Order of the Imperial household is after this underworld organization, it means they're far bigger and more dangerous than both of them expected. As a consequence, the Iskar family will likely be forced to pay a massive sum to the Imperial family to resolve the scandal. Then the Count orders his son to enter a monastery, which immediately prompts a protest from Karain. The Count tries to assure him that it's not a life sentence. Just 5 years, Rudian, however, is not surprised he expects this outcome. He knows that 5 years from now, the main story timeline will begin, when the entire continent becomes entangled in war and bloodshed. He expects to be swept away by that destruction, like the insignificant extra he is. However, Karen breaks Rudian's chain of thought by loudly protesting to his father. He exclaims that he is going to contribute, something that could elevate the family standing. The Count sighs and informs him that even a major contribution might not stop the Imperial family from interfering with their territory, unless it's truly something monumental. However, he is taken aback when Karen suddenly declares his intent to conquer the Holy Sword of Daylight. Rudian blinks, struggling to process the absurdity. He thinks to himself that, how can someone like Karen even dream of clearing that dungeon? Rudian nervously wonders if Karain has developed an early death wish. Karain, on the other hand, explains to his father that he's caught wind of the underworld, being interested in the dungeon too. But if he retrieves Daylight, the holy sword of the Delphione Duchy. They might earn support from the duchy itself. Rudian gives a strange, nervous smile. In his mind, Karen must have gone completely crazy in a desperate bid to survive the current mess. There's no way the underworld organization would help them explore that dungeon. He recalls a grim incident. The belly of Apophis, it's a dungeon, had once appeared with the evil god Apophis sealed inside. Some cultists had come up with the insane idea of clearing the dungeon. They gathered an army of nearly 100,000 enthusiastic adventurers, only for all of them to end up as food for Apophis. After that catastrophe, everyone became cautious. Now survey teams are always sent before anyone dares to step into a dungeon. At this point, Rudy seriously doubts that the Count will agree to Karen's reckless idea. As expected, the Count tries to reason with Karen, pointing out that it is a dungeon of unknown difficulty, even though it's within their territory. That doesn't mean he's willing to commit a large army to this reckless cause. But Karen grabs his father's hand, full of enthusiasm, and pleads with him. The Count is visibly confused, unsure of how to respond. Rudy, on the other hand, is certain that the Count won't agree to this foolish idea, as there's no way he'd risk losing both a large force and his son. But then to Rudy's disbelief, the Count agrees. The Count sighs while saying that he will send 30 knights, including Derek to accompany his reckless son, trusting him to retrieve daylight. Then the Count calls his name sharply and orders him to take care of Karain. Rudian knows this will end in disaster. The Count tells his son that he trusts him and that he shouldn't disappoint him. Karain grips his father's hand tightly, filled with confidence as he promises to retrieve the holy sword. Satisfying the Count, Rudian curses under his breath. He has no choice but to follow along. Now, Derek tells everyone about the appearance of a new monster. He is quite terrified to see that. The first monster they face is a minotaur. He can't imagine how terrifying the monsters will be. Deeper in the dungeon, however, Rudian feels relieved to see the Minotaur, because it's not as difficult as the monsters that will appear. When the main story starts, if a high-ranking monster or demon appears, Derek might run away. Rudian hopes that ordinary monsters, like the Minotaur, will continue to appear. Then they might have a chance to clear those. After Derek kills the monster and they move forward, Rudian wonders what he should do from now on. In 3 years, the continent will be engulfed in war, and in 10 years, everything will be destroyed. He plans to take advantage of the time between the war and the world's destruction. For this purpose, he intends to gather as much money as possible and then lie low in the mountains. He is satisfied with his dreamy, happy ending. Meanwhile, Karen is quite satisfied with the smooth progress. He's confident that at this rate, not only will he retrieve the holy sword, but he'll also gain enormous wealth. Derek reminds him that it's not safe to make loud noises, but Karen exclaims loudly that he won't be scared by anything. But the next moment, a few pebbles are thrown at him. When he looks back, a rain of stones follows. Derek curses while realizing that they've fallen into a trap. Now a number of stone golems rush toward them. Derek orders them to break through with force. He then commands the first squad to push back the golems, while the rest of the army protects Karain, who is now begging to be saved. Rudian drags him ahead suddenly. He notices some of the golems rushing toward them. Running faster, Derek and the other knights kill the golems from behind to protect Karain, but still one golem tries to attack Karain. Rudian pushes him out of the way to take the blow. Rudian also falls down as he looks at Karain. He realizes that his destiny is tied to him, as Karain needs to stay alive for Rudian to survive. The next moment, a golem throws him into the air, shocking everyone while in the air. Rudian chants in his mind, hoping the statue window might pop up to save him. Eventually, Rudian collapses onto the ground. After a while, his eyes flutter open, and he begins to wonder if he hadn't just died. He feels unharmed and starts questioning whether this place is some kind of afterlife. Although he remains skeptical about being alive, he notices that his body appears uninjured. He recalls that just before dying, he had prayed sincerely, so it seems impossible for him to suddenly awaken like this. Still, he's unsure about where he has landed. Then he notices the area around him, which feels like a flawless barrier formed from otherworldly mana, while seemingly located beyond the normal realm. As he examines his surroundings, he notices the intense glow and speculates whether the brilliance could be caused by some sort of magic. Just then a voice speaks while announcing his awakening. Startled, he reacts with confusion and instinctively yells. Upon turning, he notices a strange creature, and although initially alarmed, he quickly apologizes while explaining that the being's bizarre appearance caught him off guard. The monster questions the apology, but lets it slide while admitting It has been over 1,000 years since it last encountered a human. Apparently, it believed only divine beings could access this place, while making today an entirely unexpected occurrence. Rudian, still disoriented, notices that despite having no visible mouth, the entity speaks rather loudly. Curious and cautious, he demands to know his location. The creature responds, revealing that this is the site where it has remained sealed. It explains that the structure was created 3 millennia ago by a now extinct civilization known as Adora. The name doesn't ring any bells for Rudin, who thinks he has never heard of such a culture in the original narrative. Realizing he needs more context, he inquires further and asks whether the creature is a sealed entity within this relic. The response is affirmative. The being elaborates that it had remained inactive without being assigned a master. But Rudy's arrival reactivated its consciousness. A small grin appears on Rudy's face as he requests the creature's identity. The response is surprising, that the entity introduces itself as the 7th generation, general-purpose artificial intelligence, a legacy left behind by the Adora civilization. It then refers to itself as Arcadia. The term artificial intelligence puzzles Rudy, although the creature's presence somehow reminds him of a relic from a divine entity. The being expresses hope that Rudy will become its master, and asks for his answer. Rudy and hesitates, unsure what kind of consequences might follow if he refuses. Seeking clarity, he questions what benefits would come from acceptance. In response, the creature activates a skill that visibly overwhelms him. It proceeds to display Rudian's complete status, with every single detail included. Seeing the window, Rudian reacts with disbelief at how weak his stats seem. The entity explains that although this isn't a typical game, like interface with quests, the status system does allow a master to perceive numerical stats of others. However, if the difference in power is too significant, the data remains hidden. Rudy and realizes that the inability to see someone's stats is basically a warning to avoid confrontation. Even so, just having this feature is a massive survival advantage. The AI then states that this space is inaccessible to anyone without the proper qualification, no matter how hard they try. Unless they're a god. Rudy and asks what the requirement is. The reply is simple: being an outsider. He follows up with a confused question about what that even means. The creature admits it isn't entirely sure, as it initially mistook him for a divine being. That is an assumption now proven wrong. When asked how it realized he was an outsider, the AI responds that its sealed core reacted to his presence, which means he holds the authority to retrieve the terminals left behind by its creators. Rudian then asks what exactly these terminals are. The creature goes on to list them. The 1st generation collector type AI named Eldorado. The 2nd generation seeker type AI named Elysium. The 3rd generation healer type AI called Utopia. The 4th generation transporter named Dilman. The 5th generation combat type AI called Sampala. And the 6th generation restorer type AI named Eden. These 6 were all designed as support units for its primary system. If Rudian can obtain the terminals from each generation, he'll gain access to their unique abilities. And once all are gathered, the AI's main seal body can be fully restored. Reflecting on this, Rudian wonders if this strange scenario could help him craft a better ending than before. With cautious resolve, he agrees to become the AI's master. The creature seems pleased and calls the decision a wise one. Rudian suspects that the world is about to enter chaos, so forming this alliance might be a step towards survival. The AI asks for his care and guidance, and Rudy casually names it Adi. It finds the name fitting. However, it admits that in its current state, it can't fully assist its master. But if they manage to retrieve Sambala, the combat AI, they'd gain significant strength. Adi then cheers for him, and Rudian internally groans, while feeling like he's already being tricked. Adi follows up by asking about his plans moving forward. Rudian mentions his intent to reunite with his group. Once he resolves the immediate crisis, they could begin strategizing how to locate the terminals. Adi finds that plan agreeable and even calls it brilliant. Luckily, Adi seems to possess a thorough understanding of the dungeon's geography, while including its entrances, exits, traps, and shortcuts. It leads Rudian through a path and guides him forward. While walking, Rudian reflects that he was originally fated to die on that floor and moved straight on to the afterlife. But thanks to Adi, who sensed his presence and managed to awaken just in time, he narrowly escaped death. He starts to wonder if even this twist is just another cruel trick from the writer of his story. As they continue, Rudy encounters a dead body. He grows cautious while noting that whoever reached this deeply hidden place must be among the most skilled adventurers on the continent. Addy then explains that the man had entered about a decade ago, while managing to avoid all upper-level monsters and reach this point. Unfortunately, he lacked the necessary qualification, and despite struggling for ages to open the gate, perished without success. Rudian finds the situation both tragic and ironic. The man endured all hardships, only to face a dungeon that required a key he could never possess. A smirk crosses Rudian's face, while prompting Addy to ask what he's doing. Rudian replies that he's collecting the remains. While it seems pitiful, he reasons that he might as well take what's useful, according to adventurer customs. While retrieving the belongings of the fallen is acceptable, though some would just call it grave robbing, still he justifies his action. Among the items, he finds a pocket watch that appears valuable, estimating it could sell for around 10 gold. The quality of the item makes him think the man must have been quite a wealthy adventurer. He soon finds a name etched into it. That is Abel. Rudian checks the name engraved on the item, which reads Abel Retchen. He first tries to shake off the name, which feels familiar to him, but then a jolt of shock runs through him, and he collapses to the ground. The name feels strangely familiar, and he starts panicking. As Addy questions his condition, Rudian yells out the name in disbelief. His mind races to Abel Rextion, who is the main character of 7 years of reincarnation. He urges himself to stay calm and think rationally, since the timeline should make such a thing impossible. He recalls the backstory that Abel Rextion, whose original name was Li Jianwan, a 19-year-old who, after failing his college entrance exams, went looking for the infamous reincarnation truck and actually got hit by it. That incident transported him to another world, reborn into a lesser, noble family. He received blessings from the Creator God, obtained the legendary artifact White World, and wielded the sacred sword, Grandia of the Order God, starting his journey as an overwhelmingly powerful character, easily defeating demonic forces. That's essentially how the story of 7 years of reincarnation begins. However, Rudy now questions everything. There's still no real confirmation that this skeleton is actually Abel. In fact, certain clues are oddly reassuring. The outfit on the bones matches the Northern Ergon Kingdom knot, the Mauryan Empire where Abel was supposedly born. Also, the skeletal frame appears fully mature, whereas Abel had a smaller build and often felt insecure about his height. So something isn't adding up. As Addy quietly asks if something is wrong, Rudian brushes it off while keeping his thoughts to himself. Logically, at this point in the timeline, Abel should still be living a normal childhood. What unsettles him is that this place isn't far from Abel's future territory. Once he escapes this dungeon, he decides he'll personally investigate and even spend his own money, if needed, to ensure nothing is wrong. He tries not to overthink, while hoping these items don't somehow create an unwanted link between him and the protagonist. As they press forward, Addy warns that the direct route ahead contains both monsters and traps. Instead, they divert right to avoid unnecessary risks. Rudian can't help but think how useful this AI companion truly is. Continuing along the path, they suddenly come across his companions. He immediately rushes forward while calling out to Rudian. However, Derek immediately yells for him to halt, while threatening violence if he comes any closer. Addy expresses confusion, while Rudian wonders if this aggression is related to his earlier disappearance. The man insists there's no way someone who fell off a cliff could return unharmed, while accusing Rudy of being an imposter. From their point of view, the suspicion is valid. No ordinary person would survive such a fall without injury. Staying composed, Rudy crafts a believable explanation. He claims that while falling, he managed to grab a protruding root, which led him to a hidden cave, likely left by an earlier explorer as an emergency shelter. He says he avoided monsters and by some miracle made it back safely. Despite this, the man draws his sword and places it at Rudian's neck, demanding proof of identity. Within 10 seconds, caught off guard, Rudy panics for a moment, then blurts out a personal secret, that one involving a previous incident, where Derek had been caught flirting by his wife. It's enough to shake the group. Another soldier turns to the man and questions if it's true. The accused man tries to deny it, but his flustered expression says otherwise. Rudy thinks he may face retaliation later, but right now, survival takes priority. Soon Karen arrives, while acting casually and calling Rudian back to the squad, as if nothing unusual has happened. Rudian silently notes that this guy hasn't changed at all, still suspicious Derek points out how Rudian's appearance is exactly the same, which ironically only deepens his doubts. Karen brushes it off while saying that if any problems arise, Derek, the suspicious one, can deal with them with their destination nearing. He decides not to waste any more energy on the issue. Rudian breathes a quiet sigh of relief, while realizing he's avoided the worst for now. As the group moves out, Addie mentions that the suspicion hasn't fully disappeared. Rudian agrees, but notes that they're close to the dungeon's deepest chamber. Meanwhile, it surprises him that no one has noticed. Addie, the AI, explains that humans in this world can't perceive its presence unless it willingly reveals itself. When Rudian asks why he can, Addie reminds him that he's both an outsider and the designated master. This leads Rudy in to ponder what it truly means to be an outsider, since his presence was only just discovered. It likely isn't a title given to those possessed by others. Could there be more people like him? Individuals who've fallen into the world of 7 years of reincarnation. Eventually, the group exits into a wider chamber, where they encounter a lone figure holding a sword. Karen identifies the opponent. That is a Death Knight wielding the Holy Blade. Daylight, another, immediately recognizes the man as Simeon Dronzer, a noble who had betrayed the Duke's family and vanished 50 years prior. The knight, while seemingly unimpressed by his opponent's comments, that it's disappointing the Delphini Knights didn't show up in person. The soldiers quickly surround him. Derek demands answers while asking why he stole the sacred weapon and turned against his house, whether he abandoned his code just to become this twisted form. Simeon Dronzer, filled with rage, declares that to accuse someone without realizing the corruption at their foundation is meaningless without further explanation. He summons an army of skeleton soldiers and launches an attack. Immediately, Derek commands the 2nd and 3rd squadrons to handle the smaller enemies, while the 1st squadron follows him to confront the traitor directly. As Simeon Dran charges toward them, Derek roars back while initiating the battle head-on. The fierce battle between both sides continues, while Rudian grows increasingly frustrated. Despite their efforts, the enemy remains unfazed that, if anything, his energy appears to rise rather than diminish. Samir Dryan, upon observing their coordination and skill level, mocks them for their apparent lack of strength. Derek curses under his breath, while realizing that the enemy's vitality and magical reserves seem endless. Meanwhile, Rudian points out that the skeletal forces are also regenerated. At this rate, exhaustion will overwhelm them long before their opponent even falters. Karen, the evergreen idiot, tries to encourage the knights, while instructing them to remain steadfast and hold their ground. Turning to Addie, Rudian seeks insight. The AI calmly notes that an external influence is interfering with the battle. Curious, Rudian questions the nature of this power, and Audi advises him to activate his special perception ability. As soon as Rudian activates his vision, streams of information related to Simyar Drone begin flowing in. He quickly identifies a connection to the dungeon's central core. The AI elaborates what he sees is a blood magic stone, a rare high-grade artifact, often used either as a dungeon core or to store magical energy for a lich. Since the dungeon originates from a 5-century-old sorcerer's laboratory, the surrounding mana concentration is immense. Without a major shift in strategy, the group faces inevitable defeat. Rudian wonders whether destroying the core might turn the tide. Audi acknowledges that while the stone itself lacks physical durability, while reaching it through the current battlefield is nearly impossible. He estimates the likelihood of death at 90%, given Rudian's current condition. Yet Rudian, despite understanding the danger, begins advancing toward that direction. Addie hesitates and questions his decision, but Rudian firmly replies that he sees no other option. Elsewhere, a soldier warns Derek that if the skeletal horde redirects its focus toward Karain, their situation will spiral out of control. Derek knows about the unwillingness of Karen to order a full retreat, instead shifts into a defensive posture to shield Karen. Karen voices his own determination to retrieve the holy sword, no matter the outcome, while Derek continues searching for a way to shift the momentum, to distract everyone. Rudian urgently calls attention to a peculiar gemstone, embedded at the rear of the battlefield. It appears highly suspicious. Upon glancing back, Derek identifies it as the blood magic stone. He quickly asks Arnold and Chris whether they can destroy the core, with precision timing. They respond that the situation has grown too dire compared to before. The undead have multiplied both in number and strength, while making a targeted strike virtually impossible. Nonetheless, Derek insists on attempting it. With no path for escape and the enemy count escalate, while standing their ground becomes the only viable option. Addie, while observing everything. Questions whether it was truly necessary to reveal the core's existence. Rudy encounters that by drawing attention to the jewel, the enemy's concentration will likely narrow to defending a single area while creating a potential opening. Addie insists there's no need for Rudy to take such a perilous risk, but Rudian argues that among them, he holds the greatest chance of success, even without direct control over magic. While taking out the giant hammer from his bag, he replies that he can still rely on sheer physical force. While hiding behind a wall, he understands that if he will be captured, survival is no longer possible. Meanwhile, responding to the signal, Derek orders Arnold and Chris into action. As Simia Dran notices movement, he slams his weapon into the ground. A tremendous shock wave follows while shaking the entire chamber. Karen, while recognizing the effect, exclaims in alarm that it's an aura wave, a technique only accessible to sword masters. He immediately commands a retreat. However, one of the squad members quickly realizes that their other escape path is blocked by skeletal reinforcements. Panic starts spreading. Karen calls out for his father, and a fellow knight yells back, while demanding everyone rise and fight. He reasons that such a powerful move likely cannot be used again in quick succession, and thus they begin falling back. While looking at his fallen comrades, Derek wonders if this is truly his end, but he quickly shakes off the thought. He grips his sword and determines to fight. As a knight of the Lion Hearts, he refuses to perish in vain. Even if death awaits, he resolves to do everything possible to ensure the young master escapes. Just then, Samir Jan tilts his head in their direction. Derek, puzzled by the sudden shift in attention, begins to suspect something. Rudian instantly understands that he's been discovered. Addie comments that it's fortunate they weren't detected earlier. Rudian responds bitterly, while pointing out that being caught now erases any advantage. Now aware of their presence, Samir Draz locks eyes with Rudian and charges forward, filled with rage. Rudian tries to defend himself while cursing at the undead warrior, while instinctively calling for Derek. The captain, though battered, encourages him to act if Rudy and succeeds in destroying the core. He promises to overlook the earlier mistake to reveal Derek's secret. Rudian acknowledges and gears up. Adi, now fully behind him, urges him forward, channeling all his strength and determination. Rudian begins sprinting toward the core, while screaming with resolve. He declares that he will finish this in one decisive strike. As he brings down his weapon, a chilling voice emerges from the blood magic stone. A powerful entity speaks, infuriated that someone would dare to touch what it calls its heart. It introduces itself as Casley Richmond. The Dark Lord, the voice, condemns Rudian for coveting its core and sentences him to death. Rudian immediately recognizes the name that is Casley Richmond, a formidable Lich Lord, introduced in the early to middle part of 7 years of reincarnation, a catastrophic level spellcaster, capable of annihilating even a Vermilion Red Dragon with a single word-based spell. A nation destroyer, suddenly the air tightens. The Lich's voice promises a painless demise. It utters a certain kill spell, and an overwhelming magical force strikes directly at Rudian. Suddenly, Casley Richmond appears and chants that deadly incantation. She activates her ability. Yet nothing occurs. Both voices echo confusion at the sight. She wonders why her ultimate spell fails, and questions whether he might belong to a divine lineage. Meanwhile, Rudian, still stunned, realizes he's somehow alive. She attempts the lethal spell again, but once more it proves ineffective. Frustrated, she deems it impossible, convinced he must be protected by a divine class enchantment. Our boy, thoroughly puzzled, turns his gaze toward Addie, silently questioning her involvement. She calmly confirms, while stating that such a primitive curse dared to touch him, so she intercepted it despite being partially functional. She claims managing that much is still within her capacity. Our boy is left reeling, while thinking how an incantation of the 9th tier, once thought grand enough to target royal courts, is labeled by Adi as basic. Observing his surprise, Addie reminds him of her competence, while highlighting her advanced nature as an AI. Rudian, still recovering from the shock, reflects on how effortlessly Addie nullifies Casley Richmond's strongest ability. He wonders how powerful she'll become once her full functions return. A radiant glow then emerges, while prompting Rudian to squint at the brightness. Addie instructs him to stay put, as she begins forming a dimensional gateway, while assuring that she'll arrive shortly. She recalls Casley referring to the blood magic stone as her heart. Our boy thinks back to that moment, while realizing that the heart is the sole vulnerability. Of a deathless lich, he muses on whether Casley even understands the concept of professional boundaries, confirming again that the blood magic stone is indeed fragile. He prepares to destroy it. Casley, desperate, offers a bargain, while pleading for her life in exchange for anything else. He dismisses her while claiming her life is what he wants. She panics while offering. Instead, her treasure and magical knowledge amassed over centuries. Rudian swiftly rejects the offer. Panicked, she orders Samir to kill him immediately. As Samir charges forward, Rudian vows to strike faster. He unleashes an attack infused with resolve while shouting her name. As he delivers the blow, she screams about her dreams and ambitions. As she's engulfed in the burst, the spectators from the capital, while watching from afar, erupt in joy. As he's done it, Simeon Dren screams in fury, while something begins to form over the boy's body. He wonders aloud what this sensation could be. His system soon informs him that he has absorbed the essence of a high-tier blood magic crystal. His physique strengthens, and his mana increases by 20 units. Still overwhelmed, he acknowledges the surge of refreshing energy coursing through him. He recalls how enduring years of mistreatment as a servant was, all to claim this very power. However, he wonders why only 20 units came from a 5-century-old stone. Addy responds while saying his absorption rate is unusually low, which was expected when questioned. She clarifies that she filtered out the negative dimensional energy from the stone. Before it reached him, the actual intake is around 8%. Rudy, and puzzled, asks about the filter. She explains that the energy isn't regular mana, but demonic in nature. If consumed entirely, it would have transformed him into a demon. She filtered it instinctively, while assuming he wouldn't want to trade his humanity for strength. He internally shudders, while realizing how narrowly he avoided a catastrophic transformation. His head could have followed the same fate as the shattered core. As the squad leaders rush toward him while calling his name, he fears what they may have witnessed. Derek, however, praises him while recognizing his efforts. Addy reassures him that the filter did its job, and they eventually depart the battlefield. Upon arriving back at Iskar Mansion, Count embraces Karain with pride. He expresses joy over his son's achievements, while stating no one will question his abilities again, as he is now the future of House Iskar. Karain accepts the praise with confidence, while claiming his success as natural. His father agrees, stating that when Corinne inherits his role, the family will be firmly established. However, our boy watches the scene and silently predicts the downfall of this ancient lineage. Count boasts about their spoils, an endless line of wagons filled with riches. He notes the Duke's family will soon send an appraiser for the Holy Sword. Even if the Duke himself doesn't come, someone significant will, Karen is told, to make a lasting impression, which he agrees. The father continues, while saying that Karen's name will echo across the Empire due to the expedition's success, especially with the Delfinos Dukes involved. Rudy thinks revealing Cassidy Richmond's identity would skyrocket Karen's reputation, but keeping that hidden seems the wiser course. The aftermath would be chaotic, and for now, he needs to continue posing as Karen's assistant. Count then declares that Karen is now fit to enter elite social circles. Turning to Rudian, he acknowledges Derek's praise and encourages Rudian to continue supporting Karen. Rudian humbly accepts while claiming he only fulfilled his duty. The father highlights Rudian's timely strike against the distracted Death Knight, while noting that many would have been frozen in fear. Instead, he entrusts Karen's future to Rudian, who nods internally, hoping for an escape. After a while, upon seeing the generous rewards that his bonus pay, extended paid leave, he reconsiders while musing why he would ever leave such a position. Addy observes his expression and comments on his cheerful mood. Rudian, while counting the gold, admits money is indeed powerful. Addy hints that the items she discreetly acquired would prove far more valuable than the pouch he holds. Rudian agrees, but notes that the artifacts are imbued with magical traces, so trying to sell them now would attract the attention of the Magic Tower. Adi confirms while expressing regret they couldn't seize everything. Rudian, however, is satisfied they've acquired what truly matters. He reflects that a mage's essence lies in their research and spell collections, which is lifelong pursuits of knowledge. The Richmond School, once a top institution on the continent, housed such treasure selling just a few could fund entire fortresses. Even if they can't use them now, those assets will become crucial later. Addy agrees with the foresight. Our dude then turns his attention to an unresolved mystery, that how a knight who once held the holy Sword of Daylight ended up as Casley's undead warrior. This detail was absent in the original story. Daylight was meant to be delivered by the Sword Master companion Crocs after returning from a family visit, but the narrative skipped over the specifics. As the story had already shifted toward the Celestial Demon War, the writer likely deemed it unimportant and cut it out. Remembering Simurden's words about betrayal and rotting foundations, Rudian suspects that the theft of Daylight stemmed from more than greed. It might be closely linked to the demon race. They're their primary foes. Addy adds that demons will likely prove the biggest hindrance in recovery. Amani's Terminal's Addy agrees that they must be eradicated. Rudian notes that with Casley gone, the demons will now act, especially those within the Rohan Kingdom, where she disguised herself as court mage. Her abrupt death will surely prompt their response. Looking ahead, he concludes that their next goal should be obtaining a demon sword. Addy seems confused. While suggesting a holy sword would be more effective, Rudian explains that holy weapons, while powerful, are troublesome to acquire and attract unwanted attention from demons. Even with Daylight, victory alone would have been impossible. But within his car lies one of the most potent demon blades. Addy is surprised such a thing exists. Rudian confirms with confidence. Acquiring it will significantly ease their future trials. As he smirks, he utters the name that sends a chill through him. That is Demon Sword Diablo. In Baron, a relatively large village of about 500 residents, situated near the Iskar region. The atmosphere feels restless. Marco, the village head, pleads with Rudian, who has recently returned home, seeking a brief moment of rest. Rudian hadn't anticipated any obligations before retrieving Diablo, and had only planned a short stay in his hometown. Initially, he assumed something dire must have occurred. Yet Marco persistently implores him. He explains that tax officers are expected to arrive next week, and the discrepancies in figures, combined with disorganized documents, may trigger serious consequences. If the papers are counterfeit, the outcome could be disastrous. He emphasizes that Rudy is the only one capable of fixing the situation. Although hesitant, Rudy finally concedes, while reasoning that handling it once shouldn't be unbearable. However, Marco continues, pointing out that with penalties and audits happening simultaneously, it's far from a minor task, since Rudy is intelligent enough to be employed by the county's financial house. The job should be finished quickly. In desperation, Marco begs him to help. Rudian reminds him that he should have learned how to manage this before. Marco admits that it's too complicated for him. Rudian then suggests hiring a professional scribe, using the village funds. But the chief refuses while claiming it would be too costly. Frustrated, Rudy eventually agrees, while stating it would only be this once. Marco beams with gratitude while praising Rudy, and as the village's most valuable treasure. Despite wanting rest, Rudy finds himself working again. As he contemplates his situation, Marco cheerfully mentions that they'll be having beef tonight, that when he caught himself, he leaves briefly to fetch it from a storehouse. Rudy quietly scribbles something, while reflecting that although he arrived empty-handed, thanks to the chief, he's been able to get by. He notes there are almost no errors in his calculations. People say that knights with immense physical prowess in mana reserves can fight for days without fatigue. Maybe it's due to mana, but Rudian realizes he's not truly exhausted. Shortly after, he completes the task and hands the finished documents to Marco, who receives them with visible excitement. Rudian, confident from 2 years of experience, thinks such paperwork is effortless for him now. Marco then casually mentions that it's sunrise. Rudian should stop by to see Rebecca. That suggestion puzzles him. When he questions it, Marco explains that she's been maintaining Rudy Ant's house during his absence, and it would be courteous to show appreciation. Rudy encounters that he never asked her to do so. However, Marco insists that Rebecca took it upon herself to commute daily and care for the place until his return. Because of her, 3 villagers are now nursing broken hearts, and she's still managing an empty house for him. He tells Rudian to act like a real man. As Marco examines Rudian's work, visibly impressed, something shifts. Rudian suddenly clutches his head in surprise when she appears. He hides himself. Rebecca greets him, assuming he's on vacation. Caught off guard, Rudian wonders how she arrived so quickly. Marco steps in while saying he had told her Rudian was tired and would come by tomorrow. She chuckles and apologizes. She casually brushes off chief comment. Her presence after so long stirs anxiety in Rudian. He apologizes quietly and wants to escape from her, but Rebecca Von Bloodrain, her spirit seems far more suited to an urban set than this countryside village. She's a stunning woman, clearly too elegant for this rural life. The chief notes that she's sociable, has received many confessions, and even attracted attention from nearby noblemen. If not for Chief's watchful eye, something tragic could have already happened to her. Under normal circumstances, a man turning away someone like her would be mocked as Rudy, and walks away his thoughts churn. He admits that he wishes to avoid involvement. The truth is he left the village and joined the Karen faction, primarily because of her Rebecca isn't an ordinary woman. She's a demon eater in the original storyline, the one who absorbs dark magic and transforms it into blood sorcery. Rebecca Bloodrain is a central figure in the legendary 7-Year War, a primary character in the protagonist party. She's the obsessive heroine, the one who betrays and whispers devotion in the same breath. Her true self is unmistakable, even from the atmosphere surrounding her castle. As a demon slayer born of half-human, half-demon blood, she was nearly abducted by those targeting her lineage years ago. Rudian had rescued her, alongside the chief and a local resistance group. Since then, she's shown him intense affection and eventually revealed her full identity, following that he quickly accepted a position with the Iskar household. Now looking into her emerald eyes and vibrant orange hair, which is going to turn crimson when fully awakened. He recalls those events vividly. She teases him, asking if he's smitten. He brushes it off, while thinking how he initially dismissed her name as too common to notice her true identity. By the time he realized who she was, they were already close, and distancing himself had become awkward. She steps away while intending to bring stew and salad from the house. Rudian insists that it's unnecessary, but reflects silently. Although she shows no signs of the madness from the original tale, he knows she's like a dormant volcano, unstable and unpredictable. Still, he struggles to reject her warmth. Perhaps it's because Rudy, an orphan and the man he's become, finds it difficult to push others away honestly. His ties to Baron are weak. Before being hired by the Iskar household, many villagers scorned him for his orphan status. Only Marco and Rebecca ever treated him with affection. Without her awakening event, he might have claimed her for himself long ago that night. Elsewhere near the Iskar border, two men speak in hushed voices. One addresses the other as captain. Expressing concern, he confesses his doubts, while admitting that he no longer understands their mission. The captain responds with determination that they must follow orders. However, the subordinate questions the vagueness of their instructions. They've been asked to infiltrate Iskar territory under the guise of bandits and locate someone as powerful as a grandmaster, a 9th-class mage, or an individual bound to the Spirit King. The subordinate believes such a task is suicidal. The captain agrees, never having encountered such absurd demands before. Just 3 days earlier, a military commander personally delivered the order. The goal is to investigate the Iskar region and confirm whether such a formidable presence exists. The odd part is the timing. Recently, he'd heard that a minor noble from the Iskar clan recovered the sacred sword of Duke Delphine. Only hours after that rumor, the mission order was issued. Something doesn't add up 3 days later. The village's restless Rudian notices the shift in atmosphere. Rebecca explains that reports of bandits have emerged in the southeast. Rudian grows uneasy, while suspecting these might be the same individuals he'd heard about. He considers that Baron is too close to the Iskar capital for bandits to roam unchecked. In remote or poor regions maybe, but not here. Usually such threats are swiftly eliminated by border patrols. Rebecca mentions that it's not confirmed yet, but wandering adventurers have stopped by to warn the villagers. Rudy and finds it strange that Marco hasn't said anything. She replies that it's late, and that the chief has simply become more cautious. Rudian senses something deeper. He's never seen lawlessness like this during his 3 years in the borderlands. 2 days pass near the edge of Iskar territory. Rudian finally arrives at a location. He confirms it matches the description from the original tale. Compared to ancient ruins that require rare celestial alignments or scattered key fragments, this one is much easier to access. Addie remarks that the site is better concealed than most, yet still discoverable. Rudy and quietly explains the real reason that no one found it, because everyone who knew of it is already dead. The demonic sword called Diablo comes from way back, during the early days of civilization and the chaos of the Second Age. It's so ancient that hardly anyone even remembers it existed. This blade is actually where the old demon monarch, also named Diablo, is sealed. Power-wise, it's on the same level as the legendary Holy Sword Grandia, though it's got nothing to do with Serial 28. Back in the day, getting your hands on it meant surviving some seriously brutal trials. But now the sword's just lying around in a forgotten cave somewhere. Totally unguarded sounds easy, right? Not really. The catch is the moment anyone touches, they're hit with a deadly curse that wipes them out completely. No body, no soul. No trace left behind, not even dragons can resist. Rudian thinks about how dangerous this sword still is. If it wakes up before the main story kicks off, it could seriously mess up everything. Like world-ending level mess. But if he could somehow control it, he might actually be able to flip the whole game in his favor. The big question is, can Adi protect him from that insane curse? Adi, calm as ever, tells him not to worry. He remembers that the sword holds the power of a demon monarch who fought in the legendary demon conflict. Adi wasn't part of that war himself, but he knows a lot about the powerful beings who were. He admits they won't know for sure until they face the sword directly, but the fact that its seal is weakening gives him hope that he can shield Rudian from the worst of it. As Rudian thinks about the sword's origins, he realizes that war was probably over 10,000 years ago, but the runes keeping the sword sealed are only about 300 years old. He starts wondering if this has something to do with the Adora civilization, or maybe an even older one. While he's lost in thought, Adi suddenly senses the sword's presence. Upon seeing it, the blade appears remarkably plain, devoid of embellishment yet. Rudy senses that its plain design might be precisely why Diablo selected it. With that, he reaches for the weapon. The moment he touches it, his garments are stripped away, while leaving him astonished and paralyzed. His mind falters, and his body becomes unresponsive. Adi, alarmed, questions his condition, Rudian disoriented, asks about the duration of his unconsciousness. Adi explains that roughly 5 minutes passed while he was cleansing the mental corrosion that sought to dominate his consciousness. Rudian realizes then that the sword's curse isn't mere mental interference. It's a transformation curse tied to the will of the demon king himself. Adi affirms this. Whoever becomes the blade's master doesn't merely inherit its strength. They begin absorbing fragments of the ancient king's essence and gradually become Diablo's vessel. The true dilemma lies in the unbearable power, which disintegrates any mortal host. Thanks to Adi stepping in at just the right moment, Rudy doesn't get completely overwhelmed by the sword's curse. He's still holding on to control barely, but it's enough even with limited access to its power. The sword is way stronger than any regular enchanted weapon. As he grips the hilt, his reflection starts to warp and flicker, like it's struggling to stay real. Then out of nowhere, a creepy voice echoes around it. It notes that Rudian is the first human in 10,000 years to touch the blade, and wonders aloud if he'll end up like the others, just another soul wiped out by the curse. Confused, Rudian listens as the voice laments its entrapment, while cursing an archangel named Uriel X, and expresses longing to assist anyone who can withstand the curse. But the voice doubts such a being exists, noting even dragon lords could not endure it. Yet it observes that the foretold moment might be approaching. It declares boredom while choosing once again to slumber, but leaves behind words of encouragement, while urging Rudian not to falter. Rudian, irritated by the noise, wishes for silence. Time passes, and the voice resurfaces, shocked to find the human still conscious. No one before had survived more than 30 seconds. Puzzled by this anomaly, it questions whether time has become distorted, since only seconds have passed as Rudy, and insists he remains unharmed. The voice expresses disbelief. The curse, it claims, was crafted by celestial beings, using complex rites designed to destroy even divine entities. Rudian begins to question whether these beings were truly angels, or perhaps demons in disguise. Then another realization hits the voice, and it wonders whether Rudian has entirely resisted the transformation. However, it senses that the energy feels incomplete, while suggesting the process never truly began. It recognizes Rudian as a rare individual, deemed worthy of the Demon King's support. At that moment, the voice proposes a pact. Not a binding curse, but a direct blood alliance. This would grant him limitless power with no apparent drawback, which is an offer not extended since the dawn of existence. Rudian, now considering the implications, acknowledges the overwhelming potential. Yet he suspects there's more left unsaid. The offer should have included the detail that, once the mythical age reawakens, Diablo would be set free from the blade. Startled, the voice questions how he knows. Rudian responds calmly, while pointing out that once the seal vanishes, so too will the agreement. He recalls from future knowledge that Diablo, who originally aided the main party as an external magic source, ultimately betrayed his wielder. Crux the moment he was liberated while killing him. Without hesitation, the voice demands to know Rudy's identity. Uninterested in revealing anything, he proposes a wager. Diablo should attempt to dominate him using all its strength. If successful, Rudian promises servitude, but if it fails, then for a century. The demon must lend him all its power and insight, regardless of the mythical age's return. Under those terms, the seal's eventual break becomes irrelevant. Diablo laughs thunderously while calling our boy arrogant. Still, the offer has weight. 100 years is nothing compared to its 10,000-year confinement. With no reason to refuse, it accepts the bet. Rudian reflects that without a time limit, Diablo would have surely waited for its freedom. But the deadline forces compliance, as it would lose nothing by agreeing. Thus, the deal is sealed on the condition Rudian can resist full domination. He knows that continuing to wield the sword in its current sealed form would be safer, yet gaining its full power now could drastically lower the death toll in the fast approach. Second great demon war, the clash between them begins, and eventually Rudian finds himself in a strange realm. He questions whether Adi has failed, but since his mind remains intact, he knows corruption hasn't prevailed. At the same time, this doesn't feel like success either. Then a horrified figure appears, smaller than the mountainous form. Diablo was once described as possessed, but still immense, the creature stares in disbelief and wonders aloud whether a human has truly received the hidden favor of the divine. Rudian quietly wonders if these so-called hidden deities might actually be talking about Adi. Sure, Adi says she's just a super advanced AI created by a high-tech civilization. But honestly, with the kind of power she shows off, it wouldn't be a stretch for people to think she's some kind of god. Meanwhile, the creature in front of him speaks up again. It points out that even with that kind of divine backup, Rudian isn't totally protected. Apparently his bloodline has some flaws, and now it's tangled up with the sword's curse. Not ideal, Rudian thinks about it. Is this a win or a loss? He can't really tell. It doesn't feel like either. The whole thing just feels unresolved. Hanging in limbo, the monster keeps going, revealing that while its full powers are sealed away, Rudian has also lost his divine protection. For now, Rudian doesn't back down though. He decides to roll with it. After all, the future's uncertain. And whether this turns out to be a disaster or a stroke of luck, well, might as well treat it like a gamble. He braces for a fight ready to go. But then the creature steps back. No attack, no battle. Just withdraw. Rudian's caught off guard. The demon smirks and mocks him, while saying that all it took was one sentence to make Rudian flinch. It laughs while saying that kind of reaction is fitting for someone who now wields the sword that once belonged to the so-called demon. King of pride, Rudian rolls his eyes and tells it to shut up. The creature doesn't seem offended. Instead, it says it can sense something weird in Rudian's face. A twist, something unpredictable but entertaining. It casually asks what Rudian plans to do about it. And just like that, it offers to tag along instead of fight. Apparently, challenging someone with that kind of fate isn't worth the hassle. Now Rudy is just plain confused. That's when a sudden wave of energy slams into him. He panics, thinking he let his guard down. But Adi jumps in, apologizing for being a bit late. Turns out the creature was stronger than she'd calculated. She promises to lift the limiters immediately. With a flash, Rudy and his clothes reappear. Then a mysterious voice echoes, telling him to look after the demon for the next 100 years. Rudian lets out a laugh, as weird as this whole mess was. At least one good thing came from it. Now, they got a solid starting point to prepare for whatever disaster's coming next. Later during training, Rebecca finds him and asks why he's practicing swordsmanship again, when he previously claimed to be done with it. He tells her he's rediscovered hope in his mind. He believes that with Audi's magic and Diablo's might, he can forge a new destiny. No longer content with being a background character, given that this world sees wars erupt even across species. Personal strength matters just as much as equipment. His current magic stat matches that of standard knight. However, while knowing magic and controlling it are vastly different, if others discovered he could suddenly wield it, problems would certainly arise. Training in secret wouldn't be enough either, since self-teaching has its limits. He searches for alternatives. While lost in thought, Rebecca brings up the incident from the previous day, while saying she plans to discuss countermeasures with the village chief. He assumes she's referring to those bent, or demonic figures they encountered. While observing her closely, she reaches out and touches his face, while prompting him to ask if she's even paying attention. Just then, Adi arrives to report no signs of abnormality so far. Rudian says that, although seeking aid from the central state is a separate issue, they must still prepare for the worst. Ideally, nothing happens at all, but if things spiral, he figures he can handle it himself. Still, he wonders whether his interference with Rebecca's near abduction could have altered the narrative. That event might have been a pivotal trigger for her awakening, and his actions may have set off a dangerous ripple. While staring at her, she asks if something's on her face. He tells her it's nothing elsewhere. Two figures walk in the rain. One, a man, tells Lucilla to slow down. She's excited about rumors surrounding the rediscovery of the Divine Blade. Daylight, while missing for 5 decades. Although he agrees, it's a notable relic. He insists their clan shouldn't hinge survival on a single artifact. Lucilla, however, insists his presence alone brings dignity to the Iskar family. He grumbles that if she hadn't dragged him along, he wouldn't be suffering like this. They continue toward their destination. Back at the village, the chief barks orders to reinforce the barricades, sharpen weapons, and prepare for an ambush. He grows increasingly frustrated while telling his men to consult Rudian, someone who's endured various trials while serving a young noble. Despite this, the villagers complain, while unwilling to follow someone they consider a lowly orphan, who once begged at the chief's home. Addy, after overhearing, asks Rudian if he's all right. He responds that it doesn't bother him, though his face betrays some emotion. Addy comments that his expression tells a different story. The demon within the sword stirs. Drawn to the negativity, it expresses irritation that its chosen contractor is scorned by mere commoners. With just a touch of demonic force, it offers to turn them into lesser fiends. Rudian firmly refuses. The demon shrugs while saying it would have been a fun show. Rudian accuses it of being desperate to unleash its power. The demon admits it's simply bored. Soon after, the village chief approaches Rudian, while informing him that the person he requested has arrived. Rudian recognizes the visitor as the guildmaster from the intelligence network he had contacted earlier. They move to a private location, whereupon hearing the report, Rudian shouts that Conscience Hill has been attacked. The guildmaster confirms this, while adding that news should have reached the Iskar family by now. Rudian realizes that since Conscience Hill is a military fortress, this isn't the work of random bandits. The guildmaster agrees that the invaders must be organized troops, possibly disguised operatives from the Rohan kingdom. He also affirms this suspicion, while revealing that these soldiers now hide in nearby mountains and stir unrest in surrounding territories. Several have already fallen, though a counterforce is being assembled. More trouble lies ahead, however. Rudian doesn't just worry about human soldiers. If demonic forces are involved, this battle will be far harder than anticipated. Addy warns him that enemies are already approaching. With no time left, he prepares to head out, while glancing at the demon's sword and asking for assistance. His blade agrees, amused by the chance to gauge the power level of this new era's warriors, but it warns that Rudian's body remains far too fragile to handle its full might. He acknowledges this risk. The blade reminds him that becoming one of them would simplify everything. Rudian knows that too, but also understands that turning into a demon would make him a target for both the protagonist and clandestine factions. That path is simply too dangerous. Suddenly someone calls his name. It's Rebecca. He notices her anxious expression and suspects it's tied to her demonic blood. Reacting to the threat, he reassures her while promising to return within an hour. Marco mentions that the area falls directly under the authority of the Iskar. Margrave Domain, they have already verified through the Intel Guild that the group is not merely a random crew of raiders. In response, one of the individuals sarcastically remarks how the Imperial Intel Agency seems rather efficient, while admitting that they might have acted too openly, and thus were quickly uncovered. He predicts that the Iskar forces will soon pursue them with a full battalion. Another voice complains about enduring hardship for days due to a certain command, while vowing to take reparation from villagers. Rudian assesses that this speaker is likely at the level of a quasi-knight. He quickly recognizes them as elite, mounted units from the Rohan kingdom, likely the ones who have been launching assaults on nearby hamlets and hill settlements, given that confrontation now seems inevitable, while remaining in place to fight would be equivalent to self-destruction. Rudian urgently calls out to the village leader, who immediately instructs everyone to fall back. However, the attackers express confusion and irritation at the retreat. Bernard Calcio shouts angrily, while questioning why no one is pursuing them already. As the chief runs for his survival, Bernard suddenly advances from behind and swings his blade with the intent to kill at that moment. Our boy arrives just in time to block the strike. Bernard realizes the boy is parrying with a sword, charged with mystical energy. He is startled that a youth is using a weapon enhanced with mana. Rudy and halts the assault using his own blade. Bernard, amused yet impressed, remarks on the quality of the weapon, while believing he has stumbled upon some valuable spoils. He considers himself fortunate. Rudy, and however, defiantly challenges his assumption, while catching Bernard off guard with his audacity. As Bernard prepares another strike, he unexpectedly faces retaliation from the villagers, realizing their readiness. He curses and acknowledges their hostile intent. Rudy and notes that it's only now the enemy is realizing the trap. Bernard deduces that the absence of life signs deeper in the village, means the residents were likely evacuated earlier. He commands his squad to eliminate everyone, while pointing out that few arrows are being launched, so they can systematically corner and eliminate their targets. Despite that, Bernard underestimates them while calling them mere civilians, convinced that their numbers alone can't overcome his troops. Yet battle breaks out. Bernard endures hits from the defenders, while one of his comrades refers to the villagers as pests. During the clash, Rudian demonstrates his skill with the blade, while causing an enemy to caution others not to judge him. By his youth, he had blocked the captain's strike after all. Meanwhile, the chief urges the villagers to continue, firing while instructing them to lure the invaders further in. The counterattack begins to shake the enemy's confidence. One panicked soldier questions their course of action, while suggesting they await reinforcements. But Bernard orders an immediate pursuit. The chief then voices concern for Rudian's safety, but Rudian insists on diminishing their numbers, while noting that even with a disparity in strength, exploiting the terrain gives them a chance. The chief, however, is more worried about Rudian's endurance. While questioning how long he can endure the clash, Rudian chuckles and reassures him silently, reflecting that his former self would have struggled to confront even a couple of trained fighters. Yet now, he finally feels like he belongs in this harsh world. Elsewhere, Rebecca flees in terror, torn between escaping and not hindering Rudian. She wrestles with her fear, but manages to steady herself while admitting she must stay strong. Her hunger surfaces while reminding her of her humanity amid the chaos. Back in the skirmish, Rudian continues battling. He ponders drawing upon Diablo's strength, while knowing it would allow him to end the fight swiftly. However, he remains cautious that it's a volatile force he still cannot command. If it spirals out of control, it might annihilate the entire village. One of his foes, sensing his aura, screams not to approach. Traps lie ahead. The villagers had set up monster-level snares. A defender confirms that beast traps are most effective for beasts like them. Bernard, frustrated, realizes they've turned their homeland into a death zone. In other settlements, they'd severed limbs as warnings while forcing others to crawl in fear. But here the resistance is relentless. Marco proudly declares that this tenacity is Baron Village's essence. The enemy thought a few flashy soldiers would subdue it. However, Baron holds the highest percentage of retired warriors, and even common villagers are trained in basic combat. Moreover, their leader, Marco, was once a centurion, dismissed from service after a controversial duel. He's a hardened man capable of standing against elite units. Bernard is incensed. Rudian retorts that once they eliminate Bernard's crew, it'll all end. Bernard re-evaluates the boy, recognizing that he is not to be taken lightly. Despite his age and incomplete growth, he withstood a mana-infused strike. Out of a grudging respect, Bernard reveals a detail that this location was always meant to be the end point of their campaign. Advancing any further would place them within reach of the Iskar estate, so their squad had marked this as their boundary. He also confesses that he is merely a unit commander, not the true leader. Rudian concludes that this means other squads are attacking elsewhere. He considers the situation thus far. Success is due to the preset traps, but if even one more squad arrive, the entire village may be reduced to ashes. Reinforcements from Iskar's estate are likely en route. Yet the question remains that can the villagers hold until they arrive? And should he unleash Diablo's power? But it isn't the worst-case scenario. First, he must deal with those in front. Suddenly, a commanding voice interrupts, and someone calls out to Bernard. He stiffens at the sound, while realizing the speaker is the captain. Rudy's thoughts race. He recognizes the man. This is no ordinary foe, and it's Alicoma, a servant of Demon King. Upon spotting the captain, Alicoma, Rudian's mind curses the turn of events. Yet he notes the single fortunate detail, that the man arrives unaccompanied. Still, Alec's natural abilities alone completely surpass Rudian's own. Those figures displayed beside his name, presumably his enhanced stats as a subordinate, are staggering. Emerged battle strength of 36. 20 places him on the same level as someone like Derek. Someone of this caliber is merely considered a mid-ranked cert, not even among the elite Rudy, and questions whether he's capable of challenging someone of this magnitude. As someone familiar with the original story, he understood on paper the sheer force of named demons, but witnessing it firsthand proves to be an entirely different experience. Bernard, while trying to cover his failure, offers a feeble apology for the casualties. Alec dismisses him harshly, then swiftly moves to strike down another, while prompting Rudian to realize the danger. He urgently alerts the villagers. Marco commands everyone to disperse, deeply worried for Rudy and safety, but fully aware that Alex surpasses anything they can deal with. He silently prays for Rudy and survival as they flee to preserve their lives. Alex soon confronts Rudy indirectly. While questioning his interference, Rudy, and confused, demands clarification. Alex speculates whether Rudian was informed earlier, or if communication failed somewhere along the chain of command. He assumes Rudian must be aware of the ongoing activity within his own domain. Rudian, bewildered, begins to sense that Alec has misinterpreted something. Alec accuses him of serving the same higher beings, and introduces himself as a subordinate of the mighty demon. King Iblis, realizing the misunderstanding, Rudian connects it to the trace of demonic aura he carries, a remnant from his prior interaction with Diablo. Alec must have sensed it and drawn the wrong conclusion. Diablo also confirms his sharp awareness. Given the situation, Rudian resolves to stall Alec, while allowing the village defenders more time to retreat. When Alec inquires further, Rudian invents a cover, since demons often hide their identities within human ranks and are usually status conscious. He claims allegiance to Lady Asmodeus. Alec accepts this, while believing only true allies would know of her. From the sword, an annoyed voice scoffs at Asmodeus being called a goddess. While questioning how the demon realm's hierarchy has deteriorated, it remarks that Rudian's weak appearance suits such a patron. Rudian reflects that he chose Asmodeus intentionally. She selects subordinates based solely on youth and charm, not prestige. He then claims he received no special tasks from her, while emphasizing that Alec's forces are the true invaders. Alec finds the situation troublesome, while assuming local connections like Erebos haven't yet solidified in this region. He mentions that the message must have reached by Count Belstead. Rudian's expression shifts upon hearing that name. He immediately recalls Viscount Belstead, formerly Count Gustav von Belstead, a forgettable figure in the original tale. So this minor noble is now a puppet under demonic influence. It all seems to trace back to the disorder following Casley Richmond's death. That likely explains why someone like Alec is sent to a remote village. Alec senses Rudian's killing intent. While questioning his hostility, Rudian responds with determination, while bracing himself mentally for combat. Alec belittles him, claiming that neither divine blessing nor human training makes Rudian his equal in any regard. Rudian agrees internally that he possesses no divine gifts, and his martial prowess is leagues behind, but that's only when measured by sheer skill. Then the blade's voice warns him that the power he's about to unleash can only be sustained for a minute. Exceeding that duration could lead to irreversible damage, even beyond divine healing. Rudian acknowledges the risk. The voice then challenges Alec's worth as a supposed servant of Iblis. Combat erupts as the two clash with full force. During the battle, Rudian manages to sever Alec's arm. Alec reels in disbelief, confused by the pain coursing through his essence. Rudian confirms that it must feel as though his soul itself is being torn apart. Diablo's sword doesn't merely slice flesh, it inflicts spiritual damage. That's why it's classified as a top-tier weapon, later revealed as one of the few capable of harming divine beings. Its true value lies not in its physical might, but in its ability to destroy the spirit and essence of immortals. Originally, Rudian planned a suicidal close-range assault. However, Alec's brief lapse in defense becomes his opportunity. Though Alec tries to counterattack, his energy dissipates, absorbed into the sword. He grows increasingly alarmed that this force surpasses anything granted by the so-called goddess of desire. The blade's voice snaps back, insulted by the comparison to a lesser demon. Rudian urges the sword to quiet down, while knowing the limit is nearly reached. Alec, on the brink of despair, refuses to accept defeat, while claiming his strength comes directly from Iblis. But Rudian channels every ounce of power and strikes a final fatal blow. He reflects on how demonic power usually taints the land and atmosphere, while resulting in corruption. But Diablo's unique trait allows it to absorb that energy cleanly, while leaving no trace behind and avoiding future suspicion. As he finishes Alec off, Rudian declares vengeance. One day, he vows to behead every demon across the Rohan kingdom. Alec, furious and incredulous, hurls one last insult, but Rudian, undeterred, silences him with a final decisive strike. Within seconds, his sword absorbs all the demon energy from out. Our boy acknowledges the power of the sword as it sucks in the entire demon right before his eyes. The blade responds arrogantly, claiming he's lucky to have it. Otherwise, he would have been in trouble if any of the demon's energy had lingered outside. When he acknowledges the blade's comment, it slyly asks why he sent Rebecca away earlier, hinting that she might be his. He's taken aback by the question and explains that Rebecca could be targeted by the demons. After all, the entire fiasco began with the death of Casley. The blade notes that it's understandable the demons would be interested in her if she's a descendant of Casley. Then it advises him to awaken her himself and keep her close. Besides, it adds, she's pretty enough to be liked by him. At that, he silences the blade. Meanwhile, he reflects on Rebecca's twisted self in the original story, and how Abel was the one who awakened her by choice. He prefers for her to live a normal life. Then he asks the blade to drop the subject of Rebecca, as he doesn't intend to have any connection with her in the future. However, the blade quips that they'll see how things turn out while moving ahead. He wonders if the original story will continue as it did. If Rebecca ends up becoming Abel's companion, then there's a chance he might encounter her, but it feels like a far-fetched possibility. Just then, Addie informs him that she has spotted someone. At first, Rudian thinks they're enemies, but Addie adds that it's just an ordinary-looking group, an old man and a young girl. Rudian finds the pairing rather odd, especially for people traveling during a time like this. He knows he doesn't have much stamina, but if they aren't hostile, he can handle them after a few cautious steps. He finds himself standing before the newly arrived pair, who don't look ordinary from any angle. Their expensive clothes hint at noble heritage. The girl lowers her hood and greets him and Rudy, and immediately picks up the scent of blood on them. The man comments that Rudy and seems rather cautious, which in his eyes confirms the boy's potential as a warrior. Rudy and System informs him that his abilities aren't high enough to access the skill information of the old man. The man, however, notes Rudy and sharp intuition. Still, Rudian instantly recognizes them as formidable opponents, especially since he can't analyze them with his vision. The man glances at the corpses nearby and asks if that was Rudian's doing. Rudian tells him it was done with the help of the village army, but the man is certain that a particular corpse was taken down by Rudian himself, which our boy quietly admits. The man compliments him for achieving so much at such a young age. Assuming he might be a noble, he asks for his surname. The girl adds that it's been a while since her uncle has taken interest in someone's abilities. Her uncle responds that for someone from this backwater, without any formal education to awaken mana at such a young age, it's only natural for him to be curious about Rudian. Our guy, however, grows nervous upon realizing the man detected his mana with just a glance. Lucilla, slightly amused by her uncle's words, points out that she herself isn't a graduate of any mana academy. Either the uncle confidently states that if that were the case, he would know by observing them and listening to their conversation. Rudian concludes that they're clearly big shots. Besides, they don't resemble any nobles he knows from the area. The man then turns to Rudian and asks for his name. Rudian gives it, but when asked for his family name, he humbly replies that he doesn't have one. The pair is visibly shocked to learn he isn't a knight. He sheepishly explains that he's just a squire under Karen Iskar, while thinking to himself that their surprise is justified. After all, it's rare for a mere squire to awaken mana. Trying to sound dramatic, he speaks of how he fought evil to protect his village, a statement that gets Adi's approval. He thinks to himself that he's eager to test his power as well. Then, noting how unfamiliar they seem, he asks about their identity, assuming they must be outsiders. The man introduces himself as Keitel von Delfione, and the girl is Lucilla von Delfione. Rudian's eyes widen as he realizes that the man is the Sword Saint, who is an active one at that, and the current sword master of the Empire. Not only that, he's the younger brother of the current head of the Delfini family. He's a powerful knight who once served as the previous commander of the Royal Knights, and the predecessor of the Sword Saint Croix. Just by looking at him, Rudian observes that he's still active in this era. Then his focus shifts to Lucilla. In the original story, she's already married and thus cast aside as a heroine. However, she serves as the commander of the anti-demon front and is a steadfast supporter of Abel. Despite being married, she has a strong fan base of devoted fanboys. Now looking at her, she's clearly not a woman yet, probably around the same age as Rudian. Still, her unwavering confidence matches perfectly with the character from the original story. He understands now that the arrival of the Delfini family must be related to the Holy Sword. Cathal then asks Rudian about his swordsmanship mentor. Though he's sweating on the inside, Rudian carefully answers that he learned the skill from a passing mercenary and trained randomly with the knights. Cathal grows increasingly invested in our boy's life, even wondering if the so-called mercenary might actually be the mercenary king, hiding his identity. He asks if there's anything notable about this mysterious master, expressing interest in meeting him someday. Rudy, and however, internally panics. How is he supposed to explain that his swordsmanship comes from an AI? The techniques he's learned originate from the Adora civilization, and the data is stored within Addy's system. So even in his half-trained state, Rudian is the only person in this era who's inherited this unique style. Before Keitel can grow more suspicious, Lucilla steps in, defending him and gently scolding her uncle for intimidating Rudian. She then turns to Rudian and apologizes for her uncle's behavior, explaining that while he's usually reserved, today he's simply a bit too excited. Rudian is stunned a noble actually apologized. That's a rarity, considering most of them are anything but polite. From what he knows, Luciella then turns back to her uncle and offers to help clean up the mess the village has become. Kaido agrees to join her watching her. Rudian finally understands why so many readers liked her, because she truly is heroine material. But his appreciation vanishes the moment Lucilla drags him to the estate, and he has assigned the duty of cooking for everyone. He's frustrated he's supposed to be on vacation, and now he's tangled in the complicated mess of retrieving a holy sword, something that in his opinion doesn't even require his involvement. Derek escorts Keitel outside while Lucilla waves him goodbye. That night, as he lies in bed, his thoughts wander to Rebecca's well-being. She looked devastated and refused nursing care just to stay with him. Still, he's somewhat grateful for coming here. Had he stayed in the village, he'd be stuck with endless repair work. Suddenly his eyes widen as he realizes the blood he smelled from the Delphine members isn't theirs. It's from the Marauder forces, an elite group of 500 soldiers. He bolts upright, understanding that he needs to grow stronger. But retrieving the terminals for Addy is a risky business. Besides, he needs to reach master level to wield Diablo properly. As he looks at his clenched fist, he considers joining the Knight forces instead of a mercenary group. It would better suit his strength. He gazes out the window and sees people laughing and chatting. It seems the matter of the Holy Sword has wrapped up nicely. While watching them, he knows that in 5 years this place will be nothing but ashes. So it's good that people enjoy their lives while they can. Just then, Addy informs him that a guest has arrived at his room. He turns to find Karain and Derek standing there. Karain casually asks about his absence from the feast. Nervously, Rudian thinks about how he didn't want to attend a noble party as a mere commoner and become the center of unwanted attention. He tries to excuse himself, saying his status prevented him from joining. Karen brushes it off and tells him he's expected to assist. As his servant Rudian's face darkens, he's still technically on vacation. He mutters an apology, but Karen waves it away. Then Derek clears his throat and shifts the topic to Rudian's role in saving the village. Rudian offers a nervous thanks, growing increasingly uneasy at the realization that the Count already knows. News like that should have taken days to travel, meaning someone from the Delfino family must have passed it along. Derek expresses how pleased the Count is with Rudian's accomplishments, but Rudian notices something unusual in Derek's behavior. Finally, Derek reveals that although things have gone smoothly with the Delfini family, they have one condition. It's then that Rudian realizes the situation is serious enough for Derek to personally come and inform him. Karen quickly answers that Rudy needs to enroll in the Imperial Academy and train there for 7 years. Rudy now understands that. Although Karen gained his reputation after acquiring daylight, there's a chance this spoiled brat could cause trouble in the future. The Academy plan is likely a way to help Karen overcome the dishonorable actions of his past. Then Derek drops a bombshell. Rudian is required to be included in this Academy plan, which puzzles him further. A little while earlier, Keitel inspects the Holy Sword and concludes that it's truly the original Sword of Daylight. He can easily feel the sensation of that sword, one he had experienced when he was young. The Iskar family is quite pleased to hear this. Simmer Drayan, an esteemed figure, who reached the highest expert level 50 years ago, could have become a Death Knight, and likely would have already reached the master level by now. Kettle mentions that he had received the information, but didn't expect the plan to succeed. He then reveals that they are going to release the Iskar Knight forces. The Lionhearts, he praises Derek for his capabilities, while stating that he truly deserves to be called the Iron Lion of the East. Keitel then challenges Derek to a spar, which Derek gladly accepts. Turning to the Iskar family, Keitel hands them the documents, confirming that the Holy Sword has been officially received. However, he also asks for a favor from the Count. The Count immediately understands that, by bringing up this favor in front of everyone. Keitel must have already planned it out. Keitel moves on to the topic of Rudian, prompting the Count to urge him to continue. Keitel asks if he wants Rudian for himself. The Count is confused and asks for clarification. Keitel explains that he has taken a great interest in Rudian's talent, as far as he knows. Rudian never received a knight's oath and belongs to common background. He intends to entrust Rudian to the foundation run by the Duke family. The Count realizes that it's impossible for someone with mediocre talent to enter the Duke family's foundation, and wonders whether Rudian possesses some hidden talent, as he had never seen Rudian display any mana. Count, being diplomatic, responds that he doesn't mind giving up on Rudian, even though Karain would be disappointed. By listening to this, Luciella immediately understands that it's part of the Count's strategy. Count Slisle says that he already understands Rudian's talent, which is why he made him Karain's assistant, as Karain is going to be the next Lord of Iskar. He then proposes that first, Rudian should get into the academy and become a proper knight, and only then can he decide where he wants to affiliate. Meanwhile, the Count is thinking of bringing Rudian back, if he truly is as talented as Kaido predicted. Kaido agrees to let Rudian decide his affiliation after his graduation. However, the Count asks him if he's going to enroll Karen as well, which is protested by Karen. But the Count doesn't pay any attention, and takes advantage of the opportunity to get his son into the academy, as well now in the present. Derek reveals everything to our boy, as he is transferring into the academy as a transfer student. However, our boy is not thrilled by this idea, because no one asked for his opinion. After a while, he stands in front of the Delphini family, who comment that they meet again. Our boy nervously recalls Lucilla's words about how they will meet again, and wonders what she meant by it. Kaido informs him that he can take a week to settle down, and then they will go to the capital together. Lucilla adds that it's a wise choice for him to accept her uncle's proposal. Besides, she is happy to have him as a junior. He expresses that. He's also happy to leave his job and servant duties behind. But inside, he is crying because no matter what, he is going to sacrifice for Karen. Then he says they will meet after a week. Afterwards, he goes to a tavern near Baron Village, where he meets the village chief. The chief asks Rudian to have a drink to celebrate his promotion to becoming a knight. Our boy humbly replies that he is just a trainee for now. However, the chief insists that he is still going to get into the academy and become a knight, but the key question is whom he will serve. Rudian changes the topic and asks about Rebecca. The chief replies that she is resting, due to the trauma from the last incident. Our boy doesn't believe it. After a while, he visits Rebecca and asks about her well-being. She answers that she's better than before. She then asks if he is going to the capital, questioning whether he really has to go. Rudian is taken aback by her directness, the first time she has asked him so openly. She expresses her wish for him to stay there and live a quiet, happy life with her. She then says with a smile that she knows she's being selfish, but she just wants to get this out of her system. Witnessing her like this, he thinks about the original story, which gives him an excuse to stay away from her. But then he thinks that no matter what, a chaotic era is coming and Rebecca will play a role in it. He pushed her away before, thinking he wasn't good enough, but not anymore with that. He places his hand on hers, expressing that he would like to stay if it's possible. He shares that while the villagers think he has a great opportunity, he doesn't want grandeur, however. There is really something he needs to do. He knows about the future, a future that will disappear in the upcoming 10 years. Meanwhile, Rebecca will be found by Abel after the invasion of the Rohan Kingdom. Even if he stays there, Abel might drive away the demons. But the people he knows and is connected with in his heart will eventually fade away. He doesn't want that for anyone, not even for Rebecca. He knows that he is the only one with the power to stop this, thanks to his knowledge of the future. So he tells Rebecca that there is something he needs to do. For this purpose, he has to walk this path. Rudian thinks she might not understand his words. But then, Rebecca nervously asks if awakening her blood power will help him. She knows he's aware of her power. However, he is completely flabbergasted by this. In the original story, Rebecca never knew about her power until she met Abel. He shouts that he doesn't want it, because her power will only make her unhappy. Basically, Rebecca's demon eater power would allow her to absorb demon energy, which is hazardous for humans. As she absorbs more, it will make her psychotic. Looking at her, he realizes that even though Abel's fate might be twisted, he still wants her to be happy. He expresses that. He wants her to keep her bright and cheerful self alive. Rebecca blushes when he says this, touched by his words for this purpose. He might have to replace Abel. Rebecca assures him that she will stay still, which brings a smile to his face. For this, she asks for a promise. When asked, she shyly responds that once everything is over, will he come to her without going anywhere. He He agrees with her after a while. He is holding Diablo and asks whether it is behind Rebecca's condition. Diablo bluntly denies it, however. Rudian insists that the demon eater power activates only after touching the demonic energy of an upper-level demon. He then reminds his blade that wielding demonic energy against someone without their consent is a violation of their contract. Diablo is impressed that Rudian knows something this significant. In this era, it means it was right to follow him. Rudian asks whether Diablo is admitting to his crime, but Diablo denies it again. Rudian responds that if it was his doing, it would have affected Rebecca as well. But he can see that the blade is fine. Maybe it indirectly affects Rebecca's power. Rudian's eyes widen when he hears this, and his heart beats faster as he begins to realize something. Diablo comments that he has finally noticed, but Rudian understands that it's because of him. The demonic energy in his heart is the reason he made a contract with Diablo. He knows that even though he has only a minute amount, it is powerful enough to affect the dormant demon eater blood. He then asks Diablo to tell him about such things next time, to which Diablo agrees while adding that even if he informs him, the consequence will be the same. But Rudian is determined to prevent anything bad from happening after 1 week. Rudy, and along with Karen and his servants, finally arrives in Nevin, the capital of the empire, and is completely in awe of the city. In the capital of the Mauryan Empire, Rudy is in high spirits as he takes in the bustling, diverse city. He truly feels like he is in a fantasy world, with the beast men and elves around him. The scale of the capital is at least 30 times the size of the Iskar estate. He is then addressed by Karain, who asks if he has eaten anything good, and he answers affirmatively. Karain expresses his confusion about why his father and Derek are concerned about someone like Rudian. But Rudian thinks Karen can't recognize that he has awakened mana. Karen even reveals that the Count wants him to bring Rudian back to the territory as soon as he graduates from the academy. He finds it quite strange, and our boy tags along. Now Rudian understands why the joint sponsorship happened in the first place, because the Count wanted him back. But he assumes Karen wasn't supposed to say in front of him. So Karen, with a weird expression, expresses how he wants a friendship between them, one that shouldn't be kept a secret. However, our boy is completely creeped out by Karen's expression. Rudian believes there won't be any friendship, but he resents Karen because he is the one responsible for cleaning up his mess. Then Karen smugly asks him to meet again after the enrollment process. He believes everyone will look down at Rudian because of his commoner background, but he thinks that if Rudian stays by his side, he will be safe when Karen disappears. Rudian thinks about how this person has become crazy. Karen is likely to be expelled, and causing trouble will be a bigger issue than Rudy, and who will be looked down upon anyway. He is free from Iskar for now. Meanwhile, at the Delphini Ducat's main estate, the lord of the estate states that he has sent Keitel to retrieve the Holy Sword, but he has once again picked up something weird. Keitel quips that it's his hobby to pick up everything. Late in his life, shaking off Keitel's quip, the lord informs him that he didn't expect Iskar to be successful in their quest. Meanwhile, our boy is observing the Duke, who is one of the most important figures in the Empire. Keitel hands the sword to the Duke. The Duke states that the prophecy of his ancestors has come true, which catches the interest of our boy. But he is invited inside the Duke, then turns to him, saying that it's been a long time since Keitel has taken interest in anyone, so he wanted to talk to him for a while. Our boy is completely unnerved by this request. After a while, he is sharing snacks with the Delphine family. The Duke begins the conversation by saying that first he wants to thank everyone for enduring the long journey. Keitel responds that it's natural to have a long journey in order to retrieve a sword. Meanwhile, our boy thinks this conversation must be going somewhere, since he is inside at the Duke's order. However, the Duke asks how he had endured the nonsense of the Iskar family, to which Keitel replies that he had survived anyway. Then finally, Keitel asks the real question about the Duke's reasoning for inviting Rudian inside, because he has never shown any interest in foundations or their students. The Duke finally puts his cup on the table and turns to Rudian. He asks permission to call him by his name, which Rudian gives immediately. The Duke then asks as far as he knows. Rudian directly knows Karain and even participated in the dungeon raid. Our boy answers affirmatively. The Duke then asks about his significant contribution in order to defeat Simeon Dran, who was linked to the dungeon by destroying the core of the dungeon. Rudian answers affirmatively again, while wondering how the Duke knows the situation inside the dungeon in such detail. Then the Duke finally asks whether Simmer Draz said something while facing them. He urges them to tell him whatever Simmer Draz said to them during the raid. Kately is confused by the Duke's words, but our boy understands that he doesn't need to hide the truth. He tells him everything. The Duke comments that Simyadrin didn't even know that the ground beneath his feet was rotting away. Then our boy reveals that before vanishing, Simyadrin uttered the word Lord. Hearing this, the Duke's eyes widen with terror. Kaido also knows something. The Duke starts to reveal that daylight is another name for the prophecy. Holy Sword. The Delphini ancestors took action against their past mistakes, but the Duke thinks that the inevitable is going to happen anyway. Kaido asks about the meaning of his words, but the Duke tries to shake it off by laughing it away. He then thanks our boy for listening to his nonsense, which leaves him totally confused. After a while, our boy is escorted to Manhwa Academy. The headmaster comments that it's unusual for Kaido to bring a sponsored student himself. Kaido greets the principal. The principal comments that they have seen each other since the birthday of the Crown Prince. Our boy is in total awe of the principal, learning that he is the same person who 30 years ago was a warlord who earned military merit by fighting the Northern Barbarians, the guardian of the Northern Front. KTL then introduces Rudian to the principal. The principal grins upon hearing about his accomplishments, which go beyond just obtaining the Holy Sword. Caitlyn admits that Rudian is useful. The principal asks if there is a chance that Rudian might be a genius, which Caitlyn agrees with. Caitlyn then reveals that Rudian might be at Crocus's level, which makes our boy nervous. Our boy doesn't like that comparison. After all, Crocus was the only martial artist besides Abel who fought a divine being with a sword. He thinks that it's not a blessing to be compared with him, but rather a disaster. Kettle urges the principal not to rush to verify Rudy's talent, as they will know with the passage of time. He then asks the principal to pay special attention to him because of his common background. The principal replies that he doubts there will be any troublesome students in his academy, and if there are, they will be educated like the Northern Barbarians. Rudian is then LED to his dormitory. His eyes widen when he sees his private room, which is the same as Karain's room at Iskar. Kittle asks if he likes the room, as it will be his for the next 7 years. Rudian answers that he likes it very much, but he has some doubts about Kittle's intentions. He knows that in the contract for the joint sponsorship, he didn't find any obligatory clauses. Kettle asks if it's not enough that he wants to nurture his talent, but Rudian retorts that it's not enough to spend this much money on him, even despite the money. The contract given to him has minimal precautions. Kaido comments on his sharp wit, noting that he has worked as Karen's assistant. He then reveals his bet with a count on whether Rudian will join Iskar or Delphine after graduation. So it's the reason he didn't add any obligatory clauses. Our boy nervously thinks that he doesn't intend to join either of the Night Forces because the academy is just his stepping stone. Kaido leaves after expressing his curiosity about Rudy's decision. Rudy thinks that his decision is to run after graduation. A while later, he addresses Diablo and asks whether the sword senses any demonic energy in the Delphini mansion. Diablo answers that it hasn't sensed anything, but Rudy presses further, prompting the blade to clarify that if there were demonic energy, it would sense that Diablo then mentions something bothering him, which Rudy admits to he thinks about the original story, in which Duke, Delphione, and Keitel were assassinated by a demon. After their murder, Delphione dukedom was LED by Luciella, but why it happened remains unclear. Rudian ponders the possible reasons. He wonders if Keitel was the target, but he doesn't understand the motive behind the Duke's murder. However, Keitel was assassinated when he left the capital, but the Duke was killed within the capital. Rudian doesn't think that the animosity of demons is the reason behind the assassination. He understands that there must be another reason. So with this in mind, he plans to get closer to the family. During his first class, students look at him and whisper, giving him strange expressions that make our boy nervous. Adi assumes that this is because they've acknowledged his true worth, but our boy isn't pleased with this kind of attention. Diablo asks if he sees many beautiful faces, wondering if this is what is called a buffet in the human world. However, our boy quickly tells him to be quiet. He wonders about the reason behind receiving so much attention. It's not like he's the only sponsored student. There are 30 students in the night department, with 7 of them being first years, including him. His thoughts are interrupted by a new voice asking if he can sit here. The student expresses that he wants to meet the transfer student everyone's been talking about. His name is Adele, a third-year student at Manhwa Academy. He introduces himself, and our boy greets him before asking what he meant by his words. But Adele reveals that it has been 10 years since a foundation. Sponsored student transferred here. Rudian asks even if that's the case. Why it's such a big deal thinking that he's just a commoner? Adele nervously explains that transferring to Manhwa Academy is completely forbidden, which Rudian already knows about. He then reveals that only students who have gained tremendous fame, or are tied to great noble families, or those close to the imperial family, are allowed to transfer. Moreover, he was personally escorted to the school by Kaito. 10 years ago, the last Foundation student to transfer was Crocus. Adele adds that it's not just Rudy who's receiving this level of attention. Karen is also getting the same treatment. Rudy and is relieved that Karen and he are in different classes despite being in the same department. Adele then finally reveals that he came to find Rudy, and because it was an instruction from the student council president. Lucilla Rudy and is shocked to learn this information. Adele informs him that students often get confused to see a commoner studying alongside them. But there's a tradition among students to guide transfer students, and he is his guide. Then he stands up, signaling that he came here because he didn't want their first meeting to be stiff, considering they both belong to the night department. Then he gestures with his hand and says that, as expected from a night trainee, they need to start their meeting with their body. This leaves our guy totally baffled, but Adele explains that everyone here is a good student, so he doesn't need to be nervous. A while later, he is brought to the training ground by Adele. He meets two other students there, Oliver Dran and Claudia Rage. Both fifth years Adele also introduces him to Karen Letitia, who introduces herself as a graduating senior. She's impressed that Rudian was escorted by the Sword Saint. Rudian humbly tries to brush off the event, but Karen reveals that Kaito is not someone who would take pity on anyone. She then challenges him to spar with her. She throws a wooden sword at him, while stating that she won't use all her power. She just wants to see his skill. So all he needs to do is try to attack her with all his might. However, our guy has doubts about this. Looking at her expression, Adele tries to intervene, but Karen shuts him up, saying she's not going to eat Rudian. She just wants to test his skill. Claudia and Oliver are also curious about Rudian's skill, while our guy is on the verge of tears, thinking about a way to beat everyone. When he takes his stance to start the swordsmanship, Karen asks about the name of his style. With a flashy pose, our dude reveals that it's Adora. Karen has never heard of this name, but she urges him to start the match with that. Our boy attacks her, but she dodges perfectly. She hits him back, but it's a close call. They then engage in a spar. Oliver thinks the match is disappointing, but Claudia reveals that Rudian's lower body balance is off, and his movement is too slow. Not only is his sword form also not proper, Addie is furious to hear all this, thinking they don't have eyes to see true swordsmanship, but our guy tries to shut her up. Adele encourages him not to hide his skill. Meanwhile, Karen is overwhelmed. On the surface, it looks like Rudian is just swinging his sword aimlessly, but he is freely aiming at every part of her body, which leads to fundamental blocking and counterattacks. This kind of style is best for killing the enemy. She's also confused as to why Keitel is invested in it, as Rudian seems to be lacking any high skill. There must be something else she doesn't know. Then she rushes at him, disappointed by his skill, but everyone is shocked when our boy blocks her attack. She thinks the attack was infused with mana, and it would be impossible to block it without using mana. Then Rudian pushes her back, revealing that he might be attacking her with mana. She's shocked to learn that a student who just entered the academy can use mana, and on top of that, he's a commoner. Then Karen acknowledges his skill and understands why he became a transfer student. It's impossible for him to block her last attack without using mana. She steps forward and apologizes for her behavior and for using mana in her last attack. Our boy, quite irritated, hopes that it won't happen again. He didn't like how Lucella introduced him to her academy fellows, thinking that she's doing well, but might lack an understanding of people. Karen, however, agrees to give him a favor to help subdue his anger. Everyone is shocked to see Karen apologize, and Rudian blocking her mana-infused sword. Suddenly, someone demands, standing behind Karen, to know what's going on. The person, Elvin Kepler, states that he came here to see Rudian at Lucilla's request, but after seeing what happened, it seems Karen must have been showing off her skill and ended up defeated. Elvin Kepler then introduces himself to our boy and apologizes, explaining that they don't have ill intentions. However, our dude is totally baffled by his face, because Elvin Kepler belongs to the family. That is the main villain in the original story. When Elvin introduces himself, Rudian realizes that not only is Elvin from that family, but Elvin was also the one who helped the final boss defeat Abel. Elvin comments that Karen's got a seriously stubborn streak, while he will set another meeting. Karen doesn't even flinch. She stands her ground and firmly tells him she doesn't need his help, but Elvin pushes back. He reminds her it's just a welcome event for a newcomer. Rank and status don't really matter here. Plus, he's only here because Luciella sent him, and ignoring her orders isn't exactly an option. He asks if he's wrong to follow her lead. and casually throws in that he's one of the top-ranking students. So if anything goes sideways because of the recent incident, he's ready to take the heat. Meanwhile, Rudy quietly thinks about accountability. At first, he wants to stay out of this whole group thing altogether. But then someone like Kepler getting involved changes his perspective, since the upperclassmen's already made a move. Rudy figures he might as well go along with it. Addie notices how relaxed he seems and points it out. She even nudges him to admit that he's more at ease now, and it's clearly because he's far away from Karen, who used to weigh him down big time. Rudy never expected that. Just putting some distance between himself and Karen could make such a huge difference. Addie also reminds him about their plan, to dig into Elvin Kepler and his crew. Rudian agrees, though he's a bit surprised. He never thought he'd hear the name Elvin Kepler. In this world, in the Superhuman War arc, Kepler isn't your classic villain. He's not evil, just driven by a totally different philosophy. The conflict isn't about good versus evil. It's about clashing ideologies. Sure, Kepler gets painted as the antagonist, but Rudian knows that it's more complicated than that. It's been 3 days with 0 updates. So Rudian makes an educated guess on where Kepler might be, based on his knowledge of the story's progression. He decides it's time to take the initiative and go meet Elvin, face to face as he prepares. Rudian speaks to Diablo in his mind. He's thinking ahead if they do run into demons. He might need the sword's power. The blade doesn't need convincing. It jumps at the idea, practically offended at the thought of being left out. An invasion of the Middle Realm without Diablo, unthinkable. It refuses to let anyone else steal the glory, and straight up threatens to obliterate anyone who tries. Amused and slightly concerned, Rudy muses whether all elite demon lords possess such volatile pride. Addie remarks on his preoccupation, to which he admits that aligning with them, if feasible, could be beneficial. He considers Kepler's nature, once remembered as no warrior, but rather a psychic. Now, the clandestine network of psychics likely grows in secret throughout the imperial capital. Due to the lack of structured theory, psychic abilities have long been scorned by magicians. However, this underestimation leads to catastrophe during the second major demonic invasion, while resulting in widespread loss. When the magicians weaken under the demons' onslaught, they attempt to reclaim honor by battling those very forces. Unfortunately, the war concludes that is thanks to the hero Abel and his allies, before their opportunity arises. With their initial strategy having failed, they shift to a second one, which culminates in the Superhuman War. Rudian believes that, had the psychics been involved in the earlier conflict, the heavy toll might have been avoided. Therefore, he resolves to involve them in the next confrontation. Against demonic entities, the sword interjects. Pleased with Rudy and approach of enlisting others as strategic shields, still it doubts that his current standing and skills will attract meaningful support. Rudy encounters that status is secondary to time. When the conditions are favorable, any negotiation can succeed. Possessing key insights, he believes he already holds several persuasive cards. Thus, he decides to proceed toward the imperial capital, within the Mauryan Empire's urban heart in a less regulated district. Maria Kepler confirms that the figure beside her is her sibling. Elvin notes their predicament, while acknowledging that the location is heavily monitored by centuries and that demons have infiltrated this region. Maria assures him that their intelligence network remains thorough, backed by ties with the temple, while making their findings trustworthy. As a senior in the liberal arts division of the Manhwa Academy, she possesses influence and resources, despite accepting the validity of their data. Elvin remains cautious while citing the presence of nobility and the potential crisis if chaos unfolds. Kai, another member of their team, claims their family has secured a powerful asset in preparation. Elvin reacts with disbelief, while guessing they have brought in U-Parts level artifact, given the delicate nature of their mission. Stealth is crucial. Maria explains that the artifact itself has been summoned due to unpredictable threats. Elvin assigns responsibilities to ensure they locate any demonic traces. Nilruda and Dilruda, second-year students in the Academy's Night Division, assure him of their loyalty. Maria praises the Ruda family's rare gift of sensing hostile intentions, even in crowded environments, though laments how her brother previously overshadowed such talents. Elvin downplays her grievance, while reminding her that all sacrifices serve their broader objective, and that she is destined to become a leader regardless. Elsewhere, in the unlicensed entertainment quarter of the capital, Rudian walks through the shadows, while noting how the city's underworld appears far more advanced than he anticipated. Adi expresses discomfort, while questioning the reason for their presence. Rudian reveals no immediate agenda, yet he knows that various secret factions likely vie for control beneath the surface. While coinciding with the demon's preparations for another great war, he inquires if Diablo can detect the flow of demonic energy in such a set. The sword responds confidently, while claiming no urban center can escape its awareness. Comforted Rudian expresses a desire to get involved naturally in the conflict brewing between the psychics and demonic agents. Though confronting demon lords is tantamount to suicide, Rudian guesses they would not lower themselves to meddle in such areas, instead dispatching subordinates. This reduces the immediate danger. He recalls a figure named Gouda von Belstedt, a demon-affiliated villain, and the orchestrator behind the Keitel brothers' assassination. Targeting Good becomes a secondary priority, but Elvin Kepler's location remains paramount. Just then, a local confronts him while questioning his presence. Rudian swiftly subdues him, while causing the crowd to recognize his identity as a knight. He promises leniency in exchange for information, while requesting all known reports of suspicious nobles, especially any with green hair or ties to the Manhwa Academy. Within the capital's dark alleys, meanwhile, Elvin recollects news that Senior Karen has encountered an impressive new student, one seemingly under Lady Lucilla's care. Maria affirms this while noting the lady's admiration for Karen, though it poses a complication for their own plans. Elvin reasons that Lucilla is not their enemy and could be persuaded to join their side. When Maria questions whether the new student could disrupt their strategy, Elvin evaluates that while the boy's potential is notable, especially since Karen was forced to retreat during a confrontation, he remains a mere first year. The true concern lies not with him, but with Letitia Karen's longtime rival. Finally, Rudy locates his target and senses confirmation from Addie. The presence is unmistakable, a being entirely abnormal, a rare existence in this timeline. Addie classifies it as a mutant. Rudian recognizes her as the most powerful psychic in human history, the ultimate adversary of the superhuman war, Maria Kepler. He ensures that Diablo's concealment spell remains flawless, and the sword confidently affirms it. However, caution is advised, as the direct movement of the Kepler siblings indicates significant motives. Rudian agrees and prepares to confront the core of their mission in the capital, while marking the true beginning of their pivotal journey. Dell quietly states that the location is the renowned Grand Hart Theater. Elvin is confirming that the suspicious figure is indeed involved. He inwardly notes the irony. Those who constantly boast fail to notice the danger smoldering right beneath them. The odds now seem far from coincidence. Maria speculates whether the Baron is a significant asset himself, or merely another disposable pawn. However, while referring to an ancient record preserved in their lineage, she concludes that the issue should not pose excessive difficulty unless multiple threats arise simultaneously, or the opponent releases his full strength. The possibility of a true Demon King descending is slim, and they can only hope the Baron remains a mere subordinate. Eventually, the entire group ascends to the highest level of the Grand Hart Theater. Nell detects a foul, oppressive aura, clearly demonic, mixed with the stench of blood. Dell questions the blatant nature of it all, while wondering how such signs went unnoticed until now. Elvin provides an explanation that the Baron was once considered as a potential heir to the Tower of Magic, and likely manipulated the surroundings through arcane concealment. Maria deduces that this space functions similarly to a magician's workshop. Within, Baron Gouda Belstedt makes his presence known, while mockingly welcoming the prestigious scholars from the Imperial Real Academy. Elvin accuses him of orchestrating the interference caused by low-tier mercenaries who persistently obstructed their mission. Good recognizes them, while linking them to a prior assault on his commercial network under the Siora's trade union. He mocks their audacity merchant families like Kepler and Ruda, while lacking even autonomous territories. While daring to oppose his influential syndicate, he warns that their family heads should prepare for retaliation. Elvin counters while labeling him nothing more than a demonic servant. Good now understands that they've arrived fully informed, while Elvin vows to eliminate both him and all other remnants of infernal allegiance. Hidden within the Empire, Good ridicules their ambition, while questioning what 5 individuals hope to accomplish. Elvin corrects him that there are only 4 in their party. Upon turning, they discover Rudian's arrival. He casually greets them, while remarking that the timing seems appropriate, and clarifying that he does not intend sabotage, simply because they ignored him for days. Rudian internally recalls that Baron Guido Belstedt is a prominent figure from the original Chilshin story, long before the Second Heavenly Demon War. He played a key role in sowing internal discord for the demons, and gained infamy as the assassin who slew Marquis Keitel, Von Delfione Guardian of the Empire, and Duke Vincent Delfino, a revered imperial hero. Rudian never expected to encounter him so soon, and remarks to himself that despite the man's stature, his strength appears inferior to that of Alicuma, whom they previously faced. In the barren lands, the situation feels prematurely escalated. Elvin questions Rudian's ability to track them, while demanding to know his identity, and whether he stands as ally or adversary. Rudian confirms partial alignment, while stating that their interests converge. When asked about his objectives, he mentions the takedown of a demonic operative. Elvin is surprised, as this intelligence about Gouda's allegiance was highly restricted. Rudian claims affiliation with a covert group known as Adora, whose mission revolves around global stability. Elvin and crew express confusion, while having never heard of such a group. Elvin remarks similarly while questioning the authenticity of Adora, while Rudian compares it to the well-known Psychic Empire Awards. While admitting his organization lacks equivalent influence, he then proposes a partnership, that he offers assistance in neutralizing Gouda Belstad, and in return requests collaboration. He correctly identifies their intent to eliminate the Baron, and cautions that doing so in such a densely populated district is exceedingly risky, even powerful psychics. He warns cannot defeat someone like Good by sheer strength alone. Rudy reasons that Maria's presence proves their seriousness, but points out that she remains incomplete. Before any negotiation continues, he presents his offer, that aid in defeating Gouda in exchange for cooperation. He directs the proposal specifically to Maria. Maria, internally bewildered, wonders how this unknown figure managed to shadow them undetected. She also questions why he directs the offer to her, and not to her brother, how he even knows she holds the leadership role. Despite the shock, she firmly declines the alliance. Not only does she reject his offer, but she also refuses to let him leave freely. She labels him a stalker and vows to handle him next. Rudy reflects that this confrontation mirrors events from the original narrative. Good Belstead remained alive when the primary plot began, and a full-scale battle in such a public venue would endanger many. Surely his peers realize this as well. Good, no longer interested in the charade, signals the end of their exchange. Rudin contemplates their strategy, while wondering how they plan to corner a figure like Good. The Baron dares them to create chaos, curious to see how such reckless cubs believe they can triumph within his domain. With that, the battle begins. Both parties unleash their strength. After facing coordinated strikes, Good identifies the influence of a space-altering relic, an artifact of such magnitude that even the four masters of the magic tower would covet. He mocks their ignorance, while likening its use to adorning an orc with pearls. He vows to claim it, while ridiculing their attempt to shift the terrain. As mere child's play, Maria suddenly declares the presence of malevolent energy. Elvin deduces that their opponent has ceased hiding. A moment later, multiple fiendish entities manifest that are summoned from the demonic dimension. Good proclaims his rebirth, empowered by those infernal forces. No longer weak, he scoffs at their belief that they can contain him. Elvin notices his transformation. Rudian analyzes the change, while recognizing that it is not merely physical. The Baron now radiates far greater intensity. High-ranking demon vassals, particularly those connected to a king, enter an enhanced demonified state. Rudian realizes this explains the disparity in power. Compared to Alicuma, Good's combat value exceeds even Simurdra, the final opponent in a significant dungeon arc. Good warns that disrupting this intricate web for mere self-interest will carry consequences. He chastises them for escalating what should have remained a trivial turf dispute. Elvin notes that Good clearly exceeds the rank of a mere servant. His strength rivals that of mid-tier demon nobles. Maria confirms this observation, while remarking that his force is now superior to most of the nobility. Within the demon realm, Good completes his metamorphosis, while letting out a monstrous roar and launching a devastating attack. However, his assault falters as he notices something off. He cannot detect any energy from a particular individual. Her mana resembles that of an average mortal. The girl answers with cryptic finality, while causing Gouda's expression to twist in realization. Rudian, while observing in silence, acknowledges the truth even in a world overflowing with the monsters. Maria Kepler was the final boss in the novel. Her subordinates refer to her as the Golden Empress. At last, she declares that this theater shall become Gouda, Belsted's final resting place. Gouda appears bewildered, unable to comprehend the overwhelming strength before him, while claiming that no ordinary human could ever possess such a force. Yet Maria, while maintaining her calm composure, believes that in the end, he still lacks the ability to trust his own perception, regardless of his efforts or strategies. She feels the outcome remains unchanged as panic rises within him. Goody summons his remaining forces, while demanding they annihilate the monster before him. A heavy creaking echoes through the air as a creature is struck, and Goody, disoriented, questions whether he's hallucinating. Maria swiftly moves to strike, while prompting the desperate being to plead for negotiation. He offers control over the entire underground trade, promises to contact his master for a non-aggression treaty, and even mentions shares in his commercial enterprise. However, Maria finds the proposition amusing, while showing no hesitation as she delivers a devastating blow. As her skills unfold with unmatched precision, Rudian silently refers to her as a queen in admiration, while realizing that if he hopes to secure future stability, he must bring her to his side. The group without delay proceeds deeper. Elvin wonders if the battle is truly over, but Rudy urges caution, while pointing toward Good's ambiguous state. Uncertainty lingers around whether the Baron is entirely defeated. Elvin, initially confident, begins to second-guess when something stirs. Baron Belsterd rises again, while laughing bitterly and acknowledging Maria's superior strength. Nevertheless, he boasts that it's not sufficient to end him. Maria concedes that given the circumstances, his claim holds some truth. Yet she proposes that if the body no longer qualifies as human, it need not be treated as such. Her aim becomes to shatter both body and spirit before reclaiming him for her family's justice. Good screams in agony as her assault continues. Rudian observes silently, while realizing that a quick death would be a mercy. If negotiations fail, he may face the same fate. Good, amid torment, guesses that the artifact enabling spatial control is nearing its end, while stating that only divine relics can manipulate space without restriction, and even those are bound by limits. With 10 minutes left, he laughs again. Maria grows weary, while suspecting intervention from Gouda's master might soon follow, if that formidable entity appears. The confrontation could escalate beyond manageable levels. Rudian, seeing the moment, suggests it might be his time to intervene. Maria looks at him uncertain. He reminds her of his earlier claim, that Gouda cannot be slain through strength alone. Still, she dismisses the alliance once more, while asserting other solutions exist. Rudian alters his offer while retracting the formal alliance, but requesting she accept a temporary agreement, while ensuring he remains unharmed. She considers his unusually casual proposal and permits him to speak, only to listen and nothing more. He praises her decisiveness, but knows failure comes with consequences. He calls upon Diablo, the ancient demon response, already aware of Rudian's intent. Confident in his own strength, Diablo, a remnant of a demon lord, finds the challenge beneath him. Rudian laughs and launches an attack toward Gouda, who now watches in disbelief. Despite Goody's bold claims, Rudian counters with calm precision. He knows that as a magic user, Good must understand pain intimately. He remarks on Good's supposed regenerative ability, granted by immortality, and presses forward. Good's confidence begins to falter as the regeneration fails. Maria, astonished, questions the change. Rudian reflects on the secret that immortality via demon contracts cannot be undone easily, but it can be overridden by superior demonic power. Diablo, one of the 7 thrones and the strongest of his kind, nullifies the demonic gift. Without that power, Good cannot regenerate. The Baron lets out a final cry, collapsing under the weight of his shattered body. Rudian, while seizing the moment, cheers triumphantly and strikes him down once more. Gouda Belstadt, while having failed to claim the inheritance within the Count's household, eventually chooses the route of sorcery. Over time, he becomes potent, enough to aim for the position of the next Tower Master. However, his advancement eventually plateaus, and he falls behind others in the race for succession, driven by hopelessness and haste. He encounters a demon and ultimately surrenders to temptation. From then on, he serves merely as a pawn for the Demon King. He eliminates his own lineage, and ascends to lead the Merchant Coalition. Since that point, he has functioned as a crucial financial supporter of the demonic forces within the Empire, and serves as a connector between demons and the elite. Class Rudian, in reflection, believes that no matter how limited the magical path may have seemed, while forming alliances with demonic entities is inexcusable. With Gouda now gone, the demon's influence within the Empire weakens considerably. However, the magical energy extracted from it is noticeably less than what was obtained during the encounter with Kazli. Maria, filled with disbelief, wonders how Rudy managed to defeat Gouda. Upon noticing the sword he carries, she realizes it is a demonic weapon. He confirms this without hesitation, which leads her to question his sanity. She wonders if he has become overwhelmed by demonic influence, but he calmly argues that if he truly were a slave to dark energy, it would make no sense for him to have defeated another servant of the demons. Diablo interjects with amusement, while recalling several individuals from the past who achieved the same. Rudian quickly silences him, urging focus on the current situation, as Maria questions how he wielded such a weapon while retaining a clear mind. She realizes those concerns are secondary. What truly matters is that he honored his commitment. She agrees to listen to what he has to offer. Soon both head to Maria's quarters in the Maha Empire Academy. There she formally introduces herself as Maria Luke Appler, the future leader of the Psychic Empire. Rudian introduces himself as a former operative of Adora, a covert group dedicated to maintaining global harmony. Maria remains skeptical, while stating that none of the intelligence her forces possess mentioned an organization by that name. Rudian admits that their group is small and highly selective, perhaps even singular in personnel. She then directly inquires about the benefits of forming a partnership with him. Smirking, Rudian acknowledges that he could list countless advantages, but chooses to present only those necessary to persuade her. He explains that among the many underground factions, they approached the Psychic Empire specifically because it fulfilled Adora's 3 requirements: absence of evil intentions, possession of institutional influence, and pursuit of shared benefit. Maria accepts the first 2, but questions the third, while noting that he speaks of mutual goals without knowing theirs. Rudian asserts that psychic talents, unlike magical arts, are not publicly accepted form of supernatural force. Maria is surprised by his understanding, questions how he knows so much. He reveals that her people have been discreetly suppressing demonic activity to monopolize credit and avoid external interference. If they succeed in eliminating the demon influence rooted in the Empire, even the royal family would begin to favor psychics more openly. This objective aligns with Adora's own goals. While demon corruption across the continent grows uncontrollably, the Empire is still in a relatively better state, but nearby nations have already been overtaken from within. Rudian assures her that a proper investigation would confirm the truth. Maria, stunned, realizes the infiltration of demons into society is deeper than imagined. Gouda Belstad, as the leader of the Theorist Union Trade Guild, controlled nearly a fifth of the Empire's logistics, and yet he was nothing more than a minor piece in the demon's plan. Rudian offers 3 major incentives: full disclosure of all information they hold about the demons in the Empire, an alliance with the Kappler family, and access to ancient theoretical frameworks on psychic powers, once held by a long-lost civilization. Shocked by the final offer, Maria questions the claim. Addie, while observing, doubts whether the proposal is compelling enough. Rudian, however, is confident a genuine psychic wouldn't turn down such a gift. Though Maria is aware of psychic theories, Rudian holds knowledge extracted from Addie's internal archives, information originally belonging to the ancient psychic empire. He remembers how, in the original timeline, even master-level sorcerers couldn't match Maria due to her overwhelming psychic strength, but her powers came with heavy limitations. Psychic techniques, while lacking structured theories, are difficult to refine and far less flexible than magic. Furthermore, one cannot operate outside of their awakened domain. 4 generations psychics have attempted to create a unified system, always failing. Their abilities remained tied to genetics and natural potential. But now there's a clear method to break through those barriers. The full theoretical framework held by Adora is likely their greatest hope and Maria's ultimate dream. Inside the Psychic Empire's hidden base, Elvin checks on his sister. Maria assures him that she's unharmed. Elvin vents frustration at Rudian for disrupting their stability. She explains that refusing his offer wasn't an option. Elvin questions Rudian's identity, as intelligence reports describe him as an average citizen. But no ordinary human could wield a demonic sword and remain in control. Maria explains that such weapons contain high-ranking demonic spirits, and anyone unqualified would lose their soul the moment they touched one. They both grow increasingly suspicious. While Rudian knows almost everything about them, they still know nothing about him or his organization. Elvin remarks that if Rudian becomes a threat, they can eliminate him later. Maria focuses on the immediate benefits information, alliances, and ancient knowledge. These are too precious to ignore, though she still questions whether Adora's mission truly centers on global harmony. She acknowledges that they have a meeting with him the next day and decides to rest. Elvin wonders about the connections Rudy and claim to offer. Maria speculates that he might introduce them to martial-based noble houses, perhaps even ones at the level of a marquis. There are about 5 possible candidates. He considers that it might involve the frontier duke family, possibly the prestigious Iskar lineage, especially since Rudian himself is rumored to come from there. Maria simply concludes that everything will become clear soon enough. Rudian thinks carefully about the situation. Good Belstead had been the top target for assassination, but Rudian had originally planned to go after him, only after he had a solid position in the capital. Now that Gouda is dead earlier than expected, Rudian knows things are going to move faster, and he needs to be extra careful. He's still in the part of the timeline where he can make a difference, and he knows one mistake could ruin everything. As he sits in the academy courtyard, he notices senior students starting to sit beside him. He's confused that why are the minions of Maria gathering around him? They say they're just following Maria's orders. It seems like they're watching him. But one of them says Maria told them to include him in their group. He's not sure about the word faction, but a younger boy calls it an alliance instead. Rudy thinks to himself that no matter what word they use, the real reason is obvious, that they're keeping an eye on him. He remembers that Elvin and Karen used to be on opposite sides. Now, that Karen has to protect him. And if he's staying in the same group, things might get a little awkward. The siblings bring up Maria again, while saying Elvin has joined too. Then Maria shows up and calls for Rudian. Elvin wants to know where Rudian is taking them. Rudian doesn't give a clear answer, and just says that they'll understand once they get there. The scene shifts to the garden inside the imperial palace of Moria. Lucilla arrives and greets the imperial prince respectfully, the woman in Prince's arm. Citri Belstead, daughter of Baron Belstead. Also greet her back. Prince was quite irritated at Lucilla for not accepting his girl's greeting. Citri says it's been a while since she last saw Lucilla. Prince then mentions how busy the Lucilla has been and asks about the task she was entrusted with. Lucilla gives a formal update about Baron Good Belstead's recent murder. She even shows a document as proof. Rojo reacts with a mix of hope and sadness, while saying he hopes they're making progress. Lucilla says that they're getting close to finding the people behind the murder, and promises Citri that justice will be served and her father's name honored. Citri thanks her boyfriend and says she'll do anything for him. After a while, in a crowded district on the east side of the capital, full of guild buildings, the group visits the information guild base. Maria seems confused, thinking they were going to the Iskar family estate. But Rudian says that to meet a noble that important, they need help from the guild. He's aware how sensitive their next move is. To keep things simple, he suggests that when talking to nobles, they should avoid using organization's real name, especially because saying empire around nobles could stir up trouble. Maria agrees. Rudian speaks to a guild staff member and asks to meet the guild master. The staff asks if he has an appointment. Rudian just says to tell them his name. A moment later, the staff returns with a completely different attitude and respectfully leads them to the top floor. Maria looks shaken. Elvin is shocked too. Everyone knows the master of the Information Guild is super mysterious. When they arrive at the office, Guild Master greets them. Maria sees her and is completely shocked that it's none other than Lucilla. She formally introduces herself as the Guild Master. Earlier in the student council room at Maha Empire Academy, Lucilla had welcomed Rudian and asked if he was settling in well. He said yes, even joking he'd live there year-round, but inside he was still worried about what was ahead. Lucilla had laughed at his joke. She brought up how busy he'd been lately. He mentioned the guild and said she must have a lot of responsibility as its master. Her mood shifted a bit, and she jokingly said that was a bold thing to say. Rudian stayed calm and called her both princess and guildmaster. That caught her off guard. She asked who he really was. He gave a detailed answer while saying he used to serve Karen, came from Iskar, and was with the Delphini Foundation. Inside, he also noticed that how she hides such huge weapon tucked in her desk. Still not satisfied, Lucilla asked how he figured out her secret Rudy and explained his logic. He said it didn't make sense for the Empire to let a private group control information. unless someone really close to the imperial family was in charge, a family like the Delphini Ductum. Hers would be trusted enough to run such a guild. Lucilla said his guess was close, but that wasn't enough. She asked for proof. That's when Rudian told her. He was the one behind Good Belsted's recent disappearance. He had picked up some documents during the mission. She questioned his claim, but he stood by it and admitted he helped eliminate the Baron, who was actually a demonic servant. She didn't believe a student could do that, but he explained that he didn't do it alone. He said she must already suspect that Gouda was involved with demonic forces. He invited her to meet again at the Information Guild, with others on his side, so he could show the truth and real proof. Back in the present, Elvin and Maria are shocked to find out that Lucilla is the guildmaster. They can't believe it. Lucilla also seems surprised and asks if Rudian really killed Gouda. Rudian says that he and his group have been tracking demonic activity in the Empire for a while. Elvin is totally baffled with the turn of events by our guy. Rudian explains that they only recently got clear evidence. Good had worked as a demonic pawn for years, and taking him down helped them find documents with Lucilla's name on them. Lucilla is alarmed and wants to know more. Rudian says Good had a plan to use the third prince, Lucilla's fiancé-to-be, to take control of the Information Guild by bringing his adopted daughter into the prince's circle and stirring conflict. Good hoped to push Lucilla out and take the guild for himself. This news clearly hits her hard. Rudian thinks to himself that in the original timeline, Lucilla would have gotten engaged to the prince, been framed, and lost her position as guildmaster. He's changing that future by telling the truth now. Lucilla says the story makes sense, but she still has two questions. How did they find signs of demons before the Empire or the Guild did? And how did they manage to beat someone that strong? Rudian tells her both answers are the same, and he is about to explain. Maria steps up and introduces herself as the leader of the psychic group. Psychic Luminous, she greets Lucilla formally. Rudian watches quietly. He believes that with these two forces working together, they'll be able to accomplish amazing things. He turns his focus to the stage. He's carefully prepared for what's coming next.